It's time for a little Saturday morning fun time! Your show manager is Martin Acosta Santana and John Aaron Schmidt. And your producer is Martin Acosta Santana. I'm your announcer, the Comic Relief Crusader. And now, your hosts, Tom and Gerry. Gerry.
Yeah, Saturday. Yay! Good morning, guys. Hope everybody's having a good Saturday. Tom and I are here to talk about this new movie. And you got to watch it in 4K. What did you think, Tom?
Oh, it looks amazing because it was shot in 70 and 65 millimeter. It was the first IMAX movie to use the black and white film, which was also interesting because it was a old stock they had still at Kodak. They didn't even really have the facility to print it, so they had to set up some makeshift printing facility to be able to facilitate this whole thing. But yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, well, that happens with time because I remember back when the advent of HD started, and how when we would shoot in 16 millimeter or Super 8 with sound, we started losing labs because of it, HD was killing the photo processing labs for film. And eventually there was only one lab we could send to, and it would take forever to get our films back. And we now live in an age where hardly anybody works in film anymore. Spielberg is one of the holdouts. And
does he even still shoot in film? I don't even know if he does. I think it's just basically Tarantino and Nolan are like the only two that I can think of.
I don't know. I'd have to check, but I know that he was not willing to. He didn't want to shoot one of those Indiana Jones films that we don't like, and he was afraid that George Lucas was going to try to make him shoot in HD, but he didn't. He allowed him to shoot in film. I still think he shoots with film, and I don't think he shot anything in video, HD yet. But he's, Quentin Tarantino is another one. You're right. They're holdouts for being film. And when I got added, hold on a second. Is deleted scenes having some trouble? There he goes. There he is. You add him. Oh, is he's gone now? What's going on?
Yeah.
He finally connects and then he goes. But basically, I like the fact that people do stuff like this and that they had to create their own lab, is what you're saying, to process the film they were using. That's fascinating. And they shot this all in 70 millimeter, or what was this?
There's some 65 because they can't use the IMAX when they're doing dialogue. So they had 65 for those shots whenever they're doing dialogue.
Why can't they?
Because of the cameras are too damn loud. Because they shoot at such a high frame rate, or they have to shoot at such a high speed because of the frame size. I mean, actually.
Right. You can hear that engine going and the sound of it whirring as it goes.
Yeah. And then otherwise, they did use some digital, but very sparingly. Otherwise, it's like probably 90% 70 or 65 millimeter film. So yeah, it's
all I know is, and all the effects in it too were done. There was no digital, right?
I think there's only like a couple digital effects in the whole movie. Otherwise, most of it is
practical.
Practical, yeah.
Because I was watching a channel, a film production team, and they went and dissected what Nolan did and recreated it in their studio, how he did everything, so we could actually look at how he did it. And it was a really nifty video. It's one of those top-notch filmmaking channels. But I don't know. I was really impressed with the film. If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't have watched it. again, because I'm immersed in history and I've read pretty much everything there is to read about Oppenheimer. And
Oh, this wasn't even a movie that was necessarily one that I had really wanted to see. I'm not the biggest Nolan fan in the world. I mean, of all of his films, I haven't seen half of them, and the other half that I like are probably like Inception and The Prestige, and the rest I can. Or I mean, Dunkirk. Prestige is one I want to see that I think I'll like, but other than that, I
Prestige
haven't
is
really cared
my
for him.
favorite.
Yeah,
Other than this,
Inception I like, but the
I liked
rest I'm not a
Inception,
big
but I
fan
had
of.
problem with the ending because people kept going on and on about his totem, and I said, "That's not his totem. That was his wife's totem. So what it does doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it does. It's meant to throw you off, you know." The other thing is, I said, "What's important is does he have the ring on in that final scene?" And he does. That tells you it's the real world. Nolan liked to play with that a little bit. "Oh, leave it in the mind of the ball." But everything was right there on in camera for you to see of whether that was, if he was still in that dream world or if he was in the real world. He was in the real world.
I
That
mean,
wasn't his
Nolan could be a
totem.
bit pretentious, but in this case, I think this is the
Yes,
one time he really kind of got out of his way while at the same time his pretentiousness
it's a
plays into the
straightforward.
movie because of the type of guy Oppenheimer was, I guess, at least from my perception of this film. Those two seem a lot alike in a sense to where Nolan is probably one of those type of guys who understands the kind of person that I think the way they present him is kind of a pretentious, um, know-it-all who, even though he knows what this is kind of the thing that's kind of the overarching story of the film is even though he's well aware of what he's doing and they kind of play into the melodramatic fact of well he's creating the ultimate weapon. I mean he's still, I mean they even bring it up to him. It's like the whole fact of you realize what you're doing but you're still doing it, and then you have that wonderful scene with, was it Truman or whatever, the president
Calls
at
him
the
a
time
crybaby, and I
that
fucking
you're
love
talking
that.
about just before the show, and that's kind of like encapsulates his whole character as a person, right? Like, because
His
you're
wife,
right, like
don't forget
his
that.
wife cracks
His
the
wife,
code at the end of the film,
she
and like,
cracked it and figured it out too.
because
She
like
goes,
you get to
"You
about that
wanna be
third
a
act of
martyr."
the movie, and you're kind of like, okay, so where is this movie going necessarily? Because that was where the point where I mean, I was enjoying the film up to that point, and I was kind of trying to figure out where these three timelines were going, because you have the three
Where's the
timelines happening
convergence?
simultaneously. And then at that convergent point where you kind of figure out, okay, this is the present, this is the past, and this is, the future, however you want to look at it. The court case is the what's to come or whatever you want, however you want to look at how the story is being told. Kind of like the center through line is the making of the bomb. There's the stuff prior to that, and then there's the stuff after, right? And you kind of get like this idea of where it's headed now at that third act. And that scene with the president kind of encapsulates everything for that character, because you have that great line of like, your bomb, you mean my bomb, I'm the one that dropped it on all those people. It's like nobody's gonna give a shit about you in the future is what he's saying. It's like it's all about me, I'm the one who's going to be attached to that for all time. And
For all time.
the breadth or the size of Oppenheimer's ego basically at that point, right? Even though he's sitting there acting like, oh, woe is me, I'm this martyr now. It's like, no.
That's
He's
funny you
totally
said that
aware of
because
what
that's
he's doing.
exactly what I
Exactly.
said.
Yeah.
I said the exact same thing to Anima. I said, "I like the fact that they left it in the film that he constantly had every opportunity to stop because he knew where it was going. Even when he knew that there was only a small percentage chance that it could destroy the entire planet by burning up the
Because of the
atmosphere,
chain
he
reaction. Yeah.
still continued." And that shows you, and I'm going to use the word, the man was clearly a narcissist. His relationships, the way he did his relationships, everything points at your
And
classic
the fact that
narcissist.
they didn't candy coat that, I think, is a big deal. And I mean, I know you weren't a big fan of the Apple scene, right? But I think that's there for a reason. Like that's to show
I
you
I still can't figure it
the
out why it's in there.
the depth of how
Because
far he goes to because he's challenged, right? And he's somebody who's
yeah,
so enthralled with himself, or he has such an ego that he can't get.
he can't. Okay, I will give you that.
on that.
because once again, his own family said that,
But yeah,
and they didn't like that he put it in there. They felt insulted by it. I'm like, I wouldn't be insulted by that because he did say something akin to that in an interview, but there's no proof that it ever happened. Nobody has ever come forward and says, yeah, that happened and he stopped it. But the other thing that people miss in that scene is when he realizes I can't let him take that apple. I gotta get rid of that apple. Has nothing to do with his fear of him eating it and dying from it. He has an image in his mind of him feeding the apple to a horse because he was very big into horses. He loved horses, a big horseback rider, and his fear was that he might feed it to a horse.
Well, and there's another part of that, and that may even you could even could have put that in the movie, but I think the point the movie's trying to make with that scene, or at least that bit, is when Kenneth Branagh's character comes in. Oppenheimer didn't weigh the variables, right? And that also goes into the whole idea of the chain reaction, is that Oppenheimer is not real good. I mean, he's a brilliant mind, but he's not real good at weighing out the possibilities. And when he does, he ignores a lot of the the possibilities of what could go wrong. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that.
And he throws a lot of just like, fuck it, we'll try it to the wind, really, with his attitude. Like, I mean,
go ahead and do it, yeah.
Simplify it, but like, yeah, he is. And it's kind of all about his ego at the end of the day, which is really kind of sad. But I'm glad that they showed that in this film, because normally movies like this would shy away from something like that, right? They would totally shy away from showing a person in any kind of light such as that. And they also show him in a sense that he cannot love anybody. He doesn't know how to love anybody. And that's shown between the fact that he's still torn between Florence Pugh and what's her face's wife, Emily Blunt's character, right? Blunt.
Yep.
Like he can't love them, and she knows that. Emily Blunt knows that, right? Like she's well aware of her relationship and her status, where this is at, and it's really kind of told in that moment. It's like, because he's like, you know, I told you about the affair. She's like, yeah, I know, but that was different. That was just between you and I. Now it's out there for the rest of the world to see. Right, because at that point, that was where she can understand Oppenheimer, because she loves him just as much as he loves himself.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way it is. Yeah.
Said, with broken, he was attracted to broken women because he was broken himself, and that's just a simple fact about people. People who are broken are attracted to other broken people, and he had so many problems. He skirted communism. And when I say skirted, he was interested in communism because he wanted to get laid, is really what it was about. He found communism a useful tool in his life because the communists were the ones who funneled his money to Spain. And they showed that in the film. I thought that was really good. I thought they're fairly honest, because I don't think he was like, I mean, he was a communist, but he wasn't a communist out of political ideological beliefs. He was a communist because that's who he hung out with. And so you just end up like becoming a smoker when you hang out with smokers. If that's the thing you do, it's what you do. So they kind of show that. And I think that it was fair. And they also show in the film, in a very fair way, that the eventual attack on him was waged on him personally because somebody held a grudge against him. What's his name? Strauss. And yeah, Strauss had a grudge against him. And they show all of that in the film. And
I think that's tied into the Apple scene, actually, if you think about it, because it goes back to Strauss didn't do what
the unseen consequences.
Did. Yes, the unseen consequences of what where the Apple Oppenheimer stopped it. Right, like he got there in time, just in the nick of time before Branagh took a bite, stopped it from actually happening. And I thought it was kind of funny that he said, "Oh, wormhole." I got the little in joke, but it's like
in joke, yeah. There was a lot of little gags in there that I liked.
Because they don't even really get into the whole idea of like the theory of where they got into like this thing could even create its own fucking wormhole, and not just the chain reaction part of it, but like this thing could destroy everything. Like they were the recklessness that they went into, the reckless abandon that they went into this project with is insane. And I love how this movie didn't shy away from showing that at any point. Like, and especially the way that Oppenheimer is just so lackadaisy about the warnings that he gets from all his colleagues, right? It's like, you could do this and it could destroy everything. And they're
Yeah,
like,
the guy
okay.
did an entire 10-page equation explaining how the Earth's atmosphere may very well erupt, killing all life on the planet if we set off this nuclear explosion. And he's trying to immediately not see the math and see if it's accurate, but to already start the process of deconstructing it. Like, how can I make an argument against this? Because he's goal oriented. He was very goal oriented, and he wanted to be successful. He had to win.
Yeah, because
And
like at
when
the
he,
point where he could have hit the brakes, right? When he finds out that the Russians weren't as far as they thought they were.
yeah, they lied.
Right? They could have slowed shit down, and instead he accelerated. And it's at that point that history could have been completely different. And I love how they use that element of, and that's why I think the Apple bit's in there, right? It's kind of a metaphor for everything going forward with him.
And because of the Apple scene, you tend to not look on Oppenheimer with a sympathetic eye because he shouldn't be.
No.
Oppenheimer is, I said it to Anima as I was watching the movie today. I said, as much as I admire him and respect what he did, if I had met that man, I wouldn't shake his hand. I think he was a piece of shit for some of his decision making. But he had an invisible gun against the back of his head too. And I think they did a good job of showing that in the film too, that this was, because Matt Damon's character, Matt Damon, really does a good job of putting that invisible gun behind his head constantly, but I felt like they should have done a better job because there were threats against Oppenheimer all the way through, you know, and they showed it in a previous production, a TV production, where it's like, you can be replaced. Maybe we can get Einstein himself, which is curiosity because they don't show why Einstein didn't want any involvement in it. He was very passive.
Well, and all of these are metaphors for the poison apple, and that's why I say it. Like, you look at the bomb itself; it's basically a metaphor for the poison apple, right? It's supposed to be this tool of great peace, kind of like the apple is this symbol of fertility and life, when actually it's poison inside, right? It's supposed to be this symbol of, oh, America is going to save itself out of this war. Well, then he even predicts it, and I don't know if this really happened in real life or if they just put it in the movie to be, poignant, but he predicts the Cold War, right? And he basically says that all this bomb is going to do is create an endless Cold War between all of us and those who don't have one yet and or will want one in the future. And it's all just basically, I'm paraphrasing how he puts it in the movie, but basically where we're all hovering with our fingers over the buttons, right? Because it's like, who's ever going to build the bigger bomb is going to be the winner at the end of the day, is kind of what he's predicting. And then this goes beyond World War II, because even at that moment where they could have put a stop to it when Germany lost, right? And
that's why they were building it in the first place.
And then he basically says, no, we got to deal with Russia and all this other shit too. Like he basically predicts the Cold War. And that's where I wonder if that was reality or if that was just them being poignant in the film.
No, I think that was something he actually did foresee. But his actual feelings on it is hard to detect. I think that was a little bit of the Hollywood part of the film, because he was so engrossed in what was that line in Jurassic Park? You're so preoccupied if you can do a thing. You don't ask if you should do a thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of the whole, that lingers largely over this film. And of course, now it's too many years too late to be able to ask those questions. Here we are, we know the results, right? We faced the 30, 40 year Cold War with Russia. And the nuclear programs we had, especially throughout the 70s and 80s. And into the 90s, and then you even had, George Bush Jr. use the whole idea of weapons of mass destruction to get us into war before. This is all, goes right back to that moment where he decided to continue this program when they should have scrapped it then. Would the world be a different place? Maybe.
Maybe.
It's just one of those things you got to kind of ask yourself.
And I talked about this before the show too, is I wanted to point out that there is the classic Greek choir in the film. And even though, and Martin pointed this out, that all the black and white scenes are based on factual characters and moments, whereas the stuff that's in color is guesstimated, dramatized, because we don't know
Well,
exactly
basically
what
all
was
the
said.
black, he's not wrong, but all the black and white stuff is mostly the court stuff at the end. And
Right.
his inquiry is mainly the whole thing in black and white. But I mean, there's stuff around it.
That
too, like
character right
here.
there, though,
Yeah.
is the one I wanted to point out. That's the kid who played Han Solo in Solo, a Star Wars Story. Just a pathetic film. But he's not a bad actor. He's really good. And he's the Greek chorus, in my opinion, because his character is not so much fictional, but an amalgamation. Because we know clearly he would have had an aide, but he doesn't have a name. And everything he says in the film is what we are thinking and say. He is the Greek chorus. He is the representative within the film of the audience. And he says the things that we want to say. And one of my favorite moments near the end is where, Strauss, played by, what's his name?
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr.
Is, he's trying to act the martyr too. And, he's like, you're paranoid, because he was talking about that moment with Einstein where he said something to him and Strauss thinks that he poisoned Einstein against him, when in fact, he was probably talking about something else that had nothing to do with you, and pointing out his own narcissism.
And that's where his ego is a bigger bomb than Oppenheimer's. And that's really what this movie is all about at the end of the day, if you stop and think about it, like, and step back and look at it.
It's about egos. It really is.
They're bigger than this bomb they built. Exactly.
Yep. Bigger, more toxic, and more corrosive, and more dangerous than the bombs.
Yes, I love how this movie paints politics as a worse weapon than any bomb could be.
Yep. And I also appreciate historically how when we see the Harry Truman, the decision to drop the bomb, it's done very quickly. It just happens. We don't get into the minutia of it, but just to get into minutia of it,
they don't even show you the bombing.
Yeah, they don't show you the bombing. It's alluded to in past tense because it just happens. What people don't understand, and I'll go into this in detail again, when you hear people say negative shit about the dropping of the bomb, the reason it was made is because all of our strategic command told the president that they're not surrendering. They've had every opportunity, and they do mention this in the film, that they're not surrendering. He says, so we need to basically show them what we can do. Matt Damon is the one that delivers this, what we can do, and that we can keep doing it. That's what the point of the second bomb was, that this wasn't a fluke. We can keep doing this to you. And that forced Japan to finally surrender. Because if they had carried that war on, millions of people were going to die. Not thousands, millions. And thousands died by the dropping of the bombs, but millions would have died if they hadn't. And that's why Harry Truman made that decision. And anybody who doesn't like it can go fuck themselves. That's history. Because it's not pretty, it's real. And sometimes you got to make decisions. In this film, though, he tries to, here's that scene where he supposedly says something to Einstein that poisons him against Strauss, but it's not. It's just, I like that they do show, what sort of probably did happen is that, even though you didn't destroy the world the way that math formula suggested you might, you still destroyed the world, which isn't true. That's waxing poetic. It's getting into the philosophy of it, and the world's still going. It's going to keep going. But that's the whole thing with dramas. They want the high dramas, find the most philosophical statement, stick by it in your story, because that's where your reality is supposedly based. So they create a reality in this film, and they stuck to the reality of it. And I think they did a good job. I would have never watched this if not for you, Tom, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did because there's some really good acting in this film. Oh yeah,
Oh
we
yeah,
got
I mean
people
the
watching it.
cast is superb. I mean, you want to
Absolutely,
talk
and he
about
looks like Oppenheimer sometimes, and it weirds me out
I mean, it's
how
probably one of
much he looks.
Cillian Murphy's best roles he's ever done. I mean, he's really good at character roles. I mean, he's been in tons of them, especially as the little weasel or, stuff we've seen him in. But
Yeah,
this is the first time he takes command of the entire film. And
he is the lead
really,
actor. Yeah,
I mean, between him and everybody he's bouncing off with here in every scene, like that's the thing. He's got such an enormously talented cast around him that helps. And I mean, as I'm going through the list of names, I didn't even realize some of these people that were in the movie, right? I didn't
like
even
that guy right
recognize them.
there. That's the guy
Well,
from
yeah, he's
Numbers.
the well, he's also if you might recognize him more so as the head elf from the Santa Claus movies when he was a kid.
From Santa Claus. That's
And
right.
then you've got Scott Grimes as one of the guys on the
Yeah, I
council. You
didn't even
got
recognize him at first until I
fucking
hey, that's Scott Grimes.
and you got Tony Goldwyn, who I swear has sold his soul to the devil and does not age.
Yeah,
Like I don't know what
he
that guy has done to be able to stay as young as he has for the
Lazy
last 40
Goldwyn.
years,
I think
but
it's handed down that they all belong
it
to the
must be
devil.
because that man has not aged since he was in Ghost. Like it's like
Yeah, I
he looks
know.
the same.
It's
And of course,
crazy.
Matt Damon, I mean, just runs away with the show. And Casey Affleck, even though he's on the movie for like only a minute and a half, he's
Yes,
still
Pash.
amazing in it.
He is. That is one of the tensest moments in the film. And I told you when I was watching that scene, this is some of the best tension I've ever felt. But this leads me to making the one criticism of the film that I had. This is in the filmmaking process. Music in every scene. It was ridiculous.
Yes, that was my biggest gripe with the whole movie. I don't what it is with Nolan and his
Overproduction
sound
of music.
mix. I had to turn up. I have a Dolby Atmos system, so luckily I have every speaker on an independent volume channel, so I can turn something up over the other. And luckily, almost all the dialogue is always in the center channel. So I cranked up the center channel and turned everything else down so I could actually hear the movie. Because
Hear
I
the movie,
swear,
yeah.
Nolan does not know how to sound mix. Like I know a lot of people
You've
complained
said that
about
before,
Tenet,
and I
and
agree
similar
with you.
people have said it, and even RLM has done jokes about this. And this movie is another prime example of how he doesn't know how to do a sound mix, and he definitely does not know how to utilize a score, right? Because you can have a composer come in and score each and every second of your movie, but it's up to the director to decide when or the score should be used. And they usually work
Where
with
the
this.
music cue starts and ends.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you have a problem here. Is what you have is you have a lot of dialogue scenes where there's score involved. And normally you don't do that for various reasons. One of the most biggest reasons is fucking distracting.
Mhm.
And you're trying to manipulate your audience. Well, if your dialogue is good enough, you don't need the music. The music comes
Yeah,
in
John
between
Williams.
scenes or sweeping, edits or montages and things like that. That's when you use that, not in the middle of an intense dialogue scene. That's the last thing you want to do is distract your audience with fucking weird music rising in the background
Yeah.
when you're having a very intense moment between two characters.
Yeah,
Exactly.
granted,
And John Williams.
sorry.
Go ahead,
Go
Stephen.
ahead,
No,
Stephen.
go
It's the
ahead.
first time we've
I
heard you
was
talk.
just so I was just about to say, yeah, I do get it. There are times in this, not having rewatched a movie just a couple of days ago, there are a couple of times where I was like, okay, Ludwig, back off, But I have to tell you, it really annoyed me more in Interstellar than it did in this, because
Yeah.
Interstellar is the one where I can't hear half the dialogue in that movie. But at the
Well,
same
this
time,
is
I don't think
okay.
I'm missing anything.
This is my complaint against Nolan. It's he has an affinity for droning music, which is why he works with Hans Zimmer, who is the king of droning music. And I find it ironic that that it's not fucking Hans Zimmer in this film, and yet he has the composer doing the exact same thing he has Zimmer doing, constantly droning throughout the film. And there's scenes where there should be no soundtrack. And going back, what I wanted to say was John Williams has talked about this, that, like in Spielberg's movie Saving Private Ryan, that The Sound of War is its own soundtrack. I don't need to put music over it,
Right.
and that's the thing, like with dialogue scenes, the dialogue itself is its own soundtrack.
Or Jaws is
And
a great example of look at how the music is utilized in Jaws. Like
exactly.
some of the most intense scenes, there is no music.
No music.
Other times, the only time the music is being used is to signify the shark.
The dinner table scene is one of my favorite moments. It's the single most intense, dramatic moment of the film. Not 1 ounce of fucking music used.
Well, there is during the face making, but once they're done doing the faces, the music stops.
Right.
You have just that little piano tune playing in the background, and as soon as the dialogue starts, it backs off.
Yep. And by the time you get to the Indianapolis story, it is all dialogue soundtrack. That's the soundtrack of that movie right there.
There is a little bit underneath it, but it grows and grows and grows until it's over. And that's a monologue, though. That's a difference. There's a difference between a monologue and a dialogue scene. When you're having an intense dialogue scene between two characters, you don't need a score. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't need to be there, unless there's something intense you're about to lead to.
Film, just be acutely aware of what Tom and I are talking about. If you watch this film, go back and watch it. And you will find the music is there unnecessarily. It shouldn't be in the scenes. You should allow the atmosphere, the dialogue, and everything to carry itself and not have music. The scene with Pash, it's a tense moment. And I got to say, it is the one moment where I think the music worked because it added to the tension. But the rest of the time, I felt it was completely unnecessary. And I brought up earlier, Ridley Scott was notorious for doing sounds instead of soundtrack, and he would do that.
Didn't he
with
reject
Alien.
a lot of his soundtracks too?
Yes, he did. He rejected the original soundtrack for Legend, right?
Legend, and didn't he for Alien as well? I'm not sure. Maybe it was Aliens I'm thinking of, but
yeah, I'm not. Cameron, I think. But like with Legend, originally it had score music, and then he worked with the studio and agreed with the studio that they would bring.
Yeah, and you had the Tangerine Dream score, and then you had the other
Dream. Yep. Yeah. But they eventually did, and that's all thanks to Charlie Deslarica, a friend of mine. He's the one who got that soundtrack released.
Well, and another guy who's really good at music was William Friedkin, and he wasn't afraid to throw out score a lot. Like I think he threw out a couple of the scores that he's like, "Fuck this music."
Well, he's the one who picked
Tubular Bells. Yeah. Which is funny that movie that's so associated with that movie, and the scene that it's in. People think about it for a minute. It's not in any of the scary scenes. It's in the scene where she's just walking down the street in the fall.
Yeah, and at the very end, you hear it again.
Real quick. That's it.
You hear a single measure of it, and then it goes into the actual soundtrack.
Yep.
You know that, and it's but Tubular Bells is actually previously released music by Mike Oldfield. It's a 45
it's actually just
minute
a section of it. Yeah,
50-minute song. It's an entire album, one song. And it
that
just
made
organically
him so
changes.
mad because that's not even the section he wanted released as a single. He's like, did you see that he released his own single and it's like the crappiest part of the song? It's like, dude, this isn't even the part that's in the movie. It's like, what the fuck are you doing, man? And he's re-recorded the album like 20 fucking times. Trees, no, he can't, and it's weird because that's the album that built Virgin Records. But yet I'm sure it's probably one of the most embarrassing things they have because he's re-recorded it how many times now? Like 25 times?
That's the other thing that's embarrassing about him is that he can't do anything new. He just keeps rehashing the exact same thing over and over again.
Well, because according to him, it's not sounding the way he wants it to in his head. So he keeps re-recording it to get it closer and closer, according to him. And he's literally done it like 20 some times now. I shit you not.
That is somebody with severe OCD. That keeps doing that,
but he's a great producer. That's the sad part is he never became a good producer for other artists. He could have, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is about Oppenheimer, and here's the Josh Hartnett. I didn't even fucking recognize him.
He left acting for a while, you know that.
He did, yeah.
He had such a bad experience with Harrison Ford in making that Hollywood Homicide or whatever that movie is called. Terrible movie. And he wanted to just quit acting, and then he came back for Penny Dreadful, and I thought that was worthy. I liked that. The first season of that show was amazing.
Well, I'm talking about unrecognizable. Here's definitely where I think Robert Downey is going to get an Oscar for this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's like, oh my God! If not for his nose, I wouldn't have known who that is. Another actor right there from Batman. He's a regular with Christopher Nolan. Really good actor. He plays the guy that's digging deep and investigating Oppenheimer for Strauss.
Oh yeah, the Weasley looking guy. Yeah. I can't think of his name, but yeah,
David
he's one of the
Desmalchian.
Joker's.
that's it.
He's
Thank
one
you,
of the
Steven. That's what he's
Joker's
here for.
henchmen.
Yeah, and he's
He
been
was
a
the
great
Joker's
character actor and a bunch of other stuff too. Yeah.
Sorry, I got to put my brace on. My wrist's hurting. There we go. God, Emily Blunt does an amazing job as his wife, because in real life, his wife was fucked up. Brilliant woman, extremely high IQ, very intelligent, but she was broken with mental illness and alcoholism. But
Well,
I
and
do
as I
like
said,
They're very
biggest-
subtle with that in the film.
Yeah, and I think her biggest flaw
Subtle
is
with
that
what?
she just the alcoholism and the nuts, her being nuts. I think he meant.
Yeah.
But I was just going to
She
say, like,
just plays it well.
I mean, they really just kind of, I mean, it boils down to she loves him just as much as he loves himself, really, at the end of the day. That's what it gets to. Because
It's
I mean,
a very one-sided relationship, and it feels
well,
that
because
way.
she doesn't even give a shit about their kid, right? If anything, that's the thing that I think paints her in the worst light of all in the film, is that she is so wrapped up in herself and her relationship with him that she could give a fuck about the kid. And they even kind of like put it in there that the kid's basically getting in the way of her life and his, right? Like they really don't shy away from that shit at all. And that's the kind of stuff they would normally candy coat in a movie like this. In fact, they would just leave the fact that they had kids out normally. And I was kind of surprised that I don't know how accurate it is, but the fact that they basically gave their kid up for a while was just that they put that in the movie.
It's
I'm
true.
like, wow.
No, it was true. And it's been said that, they weren't the best parents and they drank too much. Both of them did.
Oh, he even says it. We're too selfish to be parents. Something along those lines. Yeah.
And the kids have admitted to it. But still, when the movie came out, his grandson was one of a member of the family that stepped out for the rest of the family to say he never poisoned a professor. But you're right. Now that I look at it, I see the metaphor of what that was for. And I think it's useful. But again, it's in a color scene, not a black and white scene.
True.
Meaning it's not based on the facts. He said something about it in one of his interviews, and you don't know what he meant. He could have meant not literal poisoning, but figurative poisoning. The way he said it, if you go back and read it, it could have been interpreted that way. I found this interesting, that he had people with eyes and ears that he already knew about the Manhattan Project. I didn't know that. I'm like, that's interesting that he was already fully aware of it. And I was wondering if those eyes and ears was Einstein himself, because he keeps referring back to Einstein within the film.
Well, he had
by
a lot
the way,
of powerful friends. Don't forget that. Yeah.
I want to point out too that in this film, one of my favorite actors of all time plays Einstein, and he was in a movie when I was a kid where he played the Pope that ran away. And the Italian actor, what is his name? Tom Conti. Because he was something else. He should have been a star, and he never became the big star that he should have. He was that good of an actor. But Tom Conti plays Albert Einstein in this, and he does a fantastic job. But I often wonder how much liberty they took with the scenes between them, because I didn't realize how close they were. And I'm curious if the film was portraying that for a story or if that was true. So I'm going to go back and do some more research on that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have that much interest in this movie to begin with, just off of the concept and Nolan. I'm just not the biggest Nolan fan in the world as it is. As I said before, I like only a handful of his films I like. Well, I just find him very pretentious. I find him, is he like...
He proved he is with Tenet.
Yes, and that's my point, is like almost every other one of his movies is unwatchable. Like, that's a problem. I still have yet to see The Prestige, and that's the only one I think I haven't seen of his that I think I like.
Love that movie.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I love that movie because when you get to the heart of it, Tom, it is a psychological thriller that has an interesting turn. And they use the terms from magic within the storytelling, the process of the storytelling. They're using magic trick works to tell the story.
Yeah, I
And
have
I
it. I
thought
just
that was
haven't
really
gotten
kind of
around to
brilliant.
watching it yet.
Highly recommend it. Hugh Jackman. I mean, you got Batman and Wolverine in a movie together. Come on.
I mean, I
I
basically
love the movie.
sacrificed sleep to watch this. So it was like I started
Oh, and
watching it.
Black Widow's in it too.
I wasn't even planning on watching the whole thing. I just stuck it in just to see how good it looked because I knew it was shot on 70 millimeter or whatever. And next thing I know, I'm sucked into the movie 20, 27, 30 minutes into the movie. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like kind of getting into this. And before I knew it, the 3 hours was over. And I was really just found myself engrossed in it. And Andre didn't like it as much as he was hoping he would. I was hoping to have him pop in today, but he's out and about. But yeah, like his biggest complaint was a lot of the dream sequence stuff. He's like, he could have done without a lot of that shit. I'm like, yeah, I can see where
It
that
was
kind of
unnecessary.
bogged the film down a bit. Like, you only really need it at the beginning and the end, really, and that's kind of it. I mean, but throughout the rest of the film, it just kind of gets a little bogged down in that. But other than that, there's not really that much to bitch about. The only other thing I think I felt like the ending, and it might, after reviews, I might not feel this way because I've only watched it once. Like, it felt like the ending was still missing some kind of resolution, but it could just be me. I mean, we do get kind of this little tie up of him and his wife, like, I don't know, probably what, 20, 30 years after the events in the film.
Right.
But I mean, it's just kind of like, okay, you could give us a little bit more, maybe, or kind of like what he did after that, or, maybe how, he was right about the Cold War or something like that, just kind of something. But I mean, we kind of already lived through it, so we kind of know, I guess. But I mean, it's just, overall, I think you said it before the show in one message you sent me, and I have to agree with you. Aside from maybe Inception, this is probably his best film. This and Dark
This will
Knight
probably
and
be the best
Inception
film
are
he'll ever
probably
make.
his best movies ever. And yeah, I mean, Batman Begins and Dark Knight I love, but I hated,
I'm
Dark Knight
also speaking in
Rises.
the future tense. I don't think he'll ever make a film.
Plausibility, you're right, probably right, because at this point I have no idea where he goes from here. But we'll see.
And by the way, Jason Clarke is the lead prosecutor in this scene.
Yeah, the guy, he's done a lot of stuff.
He's
Yeah,
so good in this movie.
He's
really
a hit
he's one of
actor
those
for me.
actors.
Sometimes I like him, sometimes I don't. But it's not his fault. Usually it's just the choices that the director generally makes. Because like I hated him as John Connor, for instance. But like
terrible. But he was in a series, by the way. I'm gonna go find it real quick with Jason Isaacs, based on the two brothers, one a politician, the other Irish gangster, based off of Whitey Bulger. And it was a really good miniseries. I think it was Brothers or something like that. It was on Showtime or HBO. I'm trying to find it right now. He was.
And I know Tenet's
so
getting some debate in the chat, but like my problem with Tenet was I was like 30, 40 minutes into the movie and they're sitting there talking about getting a divorce. And I'm like, I don't give a shit about any of these characters. Right? It wasn't that the movie was confusing me. It wasn't that it was hard to follow or anything. It was just that I had zero investment. To where in this movie, that's where I got invested right away with Cillian Murphy's character. They did a good job of, it's not so much even that you like the guy, it's just you want to see his story, right?
Right. Brotherhood. That was the name of the series. Ran from 06 to 08. They got 2 seasons before it got canceled. And it's the story of Whitey Bulger and his politician brother. And it's a really good show with Jason Isaacs.
Like I've seen that.
I wouldn't be surprised if you've seen it. I got to be honest.
I don't think I have, but it sounds really so familiar.
But
I've
it was
seen a few
Jason
things about
Clarke.
Whitey Bulger, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, Nicholson, Matt Damon, and Leo DiCaprio, and
no. They also had that Johnny Depp movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not seen that yet.
It's all right. It's not too bad.
Remember when there was a competition between Johnny Depp and Val Kilmer for playing in biopics? There was it seemed like a genuine competition of who could be in more biopics, and Johnny Depp won only because
Black Mass,
Val Kilmer's crew. But Black Mass, I've seen footage of it, and it looks so fucking creepy. I don't know if I can. That's an intense character, a real dude. I just don't know if I want to watch that.
Yeah, it's one of his more stranger roles that he has taken on. He's really intense in it. I liked it
just
a lot.
on the trailer and the clips. I looked at it and went, I don't know if I want to watch that movie. It is too intense for me. Nicholson when he played a version of Whitey Bulger was at least fun, you know?
Well, I mean,
And,
Depp kind of has that side to him. Like, I mean, he plays him that way. I mean, in a sense, it's like, yeah, he's a very likable guy, you know, and he seems very friendly at first, but then he has this very cold, twisted side that comes out, and I think that's probably
yeah,
how
he
the
could be
real guy
laughing
was.
with you, talking to you, and then
Exactly,
stabbing
yeah.
you in the face the next second. It's
Exactly,
like,
yeah, and
holy
that's kind of
shit.
how Depp really portrays him in the movie. He does a pretty good job, yeah.
I'm gonna check it out. Oh my god, man! I gotta tell you. By the way, I
Yeah,
just got a
this is the
copy
part
of.
I was talking about with the Russians figuring out getting the leak with that one dude.
And I do like that they finally do kind of say who the leak was, you know, in the film, because that's actually who was the leak. And it's that was the potentiality of it, because you know, even though the communist, you know, Soviet Union were our allies at the time, even Patton had it right. He's the minute we beat Germany, he says, "Give me a control of the armored, and I'll go right into Moscow and shut them down." But Eisenhower wanted to play diplomat, and that led to the Cold War. God, Matt Damon's good in this film, dude. He really did a good job.
You know what's funny is I guess he had promised his wife he was going to take some time off filming, and the only stipulation was if Chris Nolan came a calling.
Yeah, I saw that in an interview. I think Chris Nolan calls it no vacation, back to work.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
Probably one of the most underrated actors. I love Matt Damon. He's great.
Of course,
Oh
our
yeah,
friend
Air
Steve
was
watching right now.
That's the thing. King's Port Call. Yeah, this year between Air and this, man, fucking Air was great. I mean, this is in my top.
Oh, the Michael Jordan film?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd put this in my top 10, or my top 5, but I definitely would put this in my top 10. Air and Tetris so far are my top 2 films of the year. Tetris being my number 1, Air being right there next to it with number 2. This is kind of crawling up the list as I think about it more. It's one of those movies that sticks with you. And I wasn't even sure if I wasn't like I said, I wasn't even sure if I was going to really watch it all, because I'm not the biggest Nolan fan. And part of the reason I bought it, because I missed out on the Best Buy Steelbook, because I'm like, I ain't worried about it. Well, he went and did that stupid thing about where he's talking about how important physical media is. And I'm like, you little fucker, you had to you had to do that. So I went and ordered the special edition that Walmart had, the one, or was it Walmart or Target? One of them. Anyway, and I got that one, and I was like, okay. And I just put it in just to see how good it looked, because I knew it was supposed to look pretty good. But man, I was just blown away by how good the movie actually was at the end of the day, because normally this is not the kind of thing I would expect.
No, this is a very, very good film. I mean, when you look at the things I've had nitpicks about, they're very minor. Overall, this is a well acted, well directed, the director of photography on this. And I don't know if Nolan is like Ridley Scott, secretly the DP on his own films. I suspect he is. This is one of the most beautifully shot films, period pieces I've seen in a long time. I love the photography.
The other thing I gotta say and give this movie, even though it doesn't have very many women in it, it didn't suffer from something that I've noticed a lot of period pieces suffer from, especially with the women involved, is that a lot of the women just tend to feel too modern. They don't fit. They don't feel like they're in the era they're
felt
portraying.
like women from the era.
Florence Pugh and Emily Blunt, especially, and the one you just had on screen here a little bit ago, even though she has just a small part in the movie. Like, those are like the 3 main women in the movie, and they are stupendous. They feel like they fit right in. They don't at any point feel like they're too modern, and the way they talk or the way they carry themselves or they present themselves. I mean, even the way Florence Pugh handles herself feels very of that period. And I was kind of amazed, considering I can't remember the other movie I just watched.
And they behaved like women of that period. Absolutely agree.
But there's been a couple of movies that have been period. I've noticed that lately. Yeah, that the women just don't come off right.
I want to point out right here, I paused it here for a reason, Tom, because I could not be affected by the fact visually that I thought it was weird that this is a scene with Robert Downey Jr. in it. And it's very visually reminiscent, even though shot in black and white, of the scene from Chaplin at the dinner table.
Okay, I haven't seen that in many years, but okay, yeah.
It just caught my eye. And so I paused it here because I'm like, oh, they shot this the same way with deep close-ups around the table. The wider shot is showing the backs of people and then cutting immediately to a close-up of Robert Downey Jr. And I was reminded immediately of the movie Chaplin. I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was nifty. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I haven't even really watched any of the special features yet, and this thing's loaded with them.
Another thing to point out here is that absolutely they were aware of his communist ties when he was brought in to head up the Manhattan Project. And it would be disingenuous on anyone's part to act like they weren't aware of it. They were fully aware of it. He made them aware of it. And that's a fact. And it's just funny that later that gets used against him by the Matt Damon character, even though he tries to curb it in a way that, because he says, would you have hired him if you know what you know now? And he goes, no, I wouldn't have. He says, but then again, I wouldn't have hired most of them. Mm-hmm. Or did he say any of them?
Any of them, yeah.
Yeah. I like these scenes because Emily Blunt's in the background, but she's very noticeable in all these scenes. And when she finally does get her moment, anytime she has a moment, Tom, you tell me if I'm right here. Every single time she delivers important dialogue in the film, which is almost every scene where she's talking, it is establishing something very important with her perception of the main character, Oppenheimer. And
yeah, because like I said, her identity is him.
Yeah. And she knows him probably better than anybody. And she verbally says these things that you would think are nailing him to the cross, that he's put himself on. He's hoisted himself on his own petard. But the fact is it's almost like she's been unaware of some of it. Like when she's standing there and rehashing that moment when he says, don't forget to take down the sheets before the atomic bomb goes off. When he delivers that line, and there's just this weird reaction between her and him of what that means, and you see it played out several times.
Oh, bring in the sheets, yeah.
Yeah, bring in the sheets, and she finally realizes what that really means. And she's like, you've wanted to become a martyr.
Oh, yeah, when she puts it together before everybody else. And that's just it. He's sitting there playing the whole time. Yeah.
That's the moment where she takes over as the Greek chorus and nails what Oppenheimer, and this is what I've always disliked about Oppenheimer, is that he did that. If you read him and you read him honestly, you will see a man who was putting himself up on a cross so that he could be forgiven for what he chose to do.
Well, and that goes right along with everything. And that's where I wonder if it's kind of changed your mind on the whole poison apple thing. Because I said that's kind of
no, I get it now. I get it now.
Metaphor for the whole fucking thing, right? Like that's his thing. Is no matter how, it's all about his ego, right? Like I mean, I know we keep
right,
but that's a bigger bomb than the fucking bomb, right? Like that's the whole point of this movie, is that this guy is bigger than the bomb he created, right? Like,
yeah, his ego is far more dangerous than anything. And he was still a major part in pushing forward with the hydrogen bomb. And the hydrogen bomb was even a greater yield than the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Because you need an atomic bomb to set off the hydrogen bomb.
Because you were taking it megatons instead of just
yeah. It's fucking great. Yeah, this is a great film for basically simplifying things, for you to understand why this shit was so crazy and wackadoodle, using physics in a way that is dumbed down enough for the average audience person to get it. And that's what this is.
And it was all theoretical. That's the other thing, is the fact that they went into this with such, what's the word I'm looking for?
All of it was math. It was all math at this point. Theoretical.
Oh, it was all theoretical math. Like, yeah, I mean, we're damn lucky they didn't blow us all up at the end of the day.
very much so, because there really was a greater chance that, and he kind of like admits it, that there was a greater chance of us burning the atmosphere up and killing all life, but we had to find out. And it goes back again to that line from Jeff Goldblum's character, Dr. Malcolm,
Yeah.
in Jurassic Park. You were so preoccupied if you could do a thing, your scientists didn't ask if they should do a thing. But that's science, They're so curious, as to the outcome that
Well, and they do
else.
show a lot of the scientists. They even have the faction group, remember, in the
Oh,
whole
they
thing where they
do,
have the
yeah.
two groups. And I like that they showed that, because it does show that that they at least were some people that were concerned with this, but they all knew, and that's the ticking clock in the background, right? And that's where, when the war ends, though, where you see the shift in Oppenheimer, because that's where it's like, okay, here's your opportunity now to shut this fucking thing down. And instead he wants to accelerate it because he's worried about getting beat by the Russians. But at the same time, he predicts the Cold War, and it's like he knows all the consequences, yet he continues to push forward. And it's really interesting to see a man who can wrap himself into that so much. And it does harken so much back to the Jeff Goldblum quote from Jurassic Park, right? I mean, and that's
Yep.
kind of every scientist
Well, that's the thing about Michael Crichton.
who's ever made one of these great advances. It's like, oh yeah, it's a great advance for mankind, but at what cost?
Yep. Well, Dr. Malcolm is Michael Crichton, and a lot of people don't know that was his voice in all of his books that he's ever written. He's always been on the cautionary side of science. And he finally created a character to speak for him, and Dr. Malcolm did that. And I love that they had.
Well,
that
come on,
in
he's
there.
the guy who created the story about Disneyland where the fucking animatronic creatures come to life and kill you.
West fucking world. There's a movie you and I need to do, because I love that movie, dude. That film and his previous cautionary film, The Andromeda Strain.
Yeah, Andromeda. I haven't seen that
two
one
of
in a
my
long time,
favorite
right?
cautionary films that he was involved with. Because Andromeda Strain was the first book he ever wrote that he used his real name instead of a pen name, and that he got to directly work on the screenplay.
That's why I love the line in Jurassic Park where it's like, yeah, but if the Pirates of the Caribbean ride breaks down, the pirates don't kill you.
The pirates don't kill you. There's some great
or don't eat
stuff
you,
in
or
that
whatever
movie.
the line is, but yeah.
But Westworld's a great film, and
Oh
it's
God,
one of my
yes.
favorite. Anybody who's ever seen that movie, did they ever come out, or are they going to do a 4K on that? Because that's one of those films they really need to.
I'm sure it's one that's on the docket at some point. It's had a Blu-ray.
It's a moneymaker for them. They've always made money.
I got Future World and I got Westworld, but yeah, I haven't heard anything about a newer version anytime soon. But it'd be nice. But yeah, what's weird is like this. I'm kind of surprised that Crichton never did touch upon Oppenheimer's life, because he'd be one of the only other guys that I could see doing the story kind of like this. I mean, he would have been a little more heavy-handed into it. And that's the thing I guess I got to give Nolan credit for.
He would have gotten more into the moral aspects of it, rather
exactly.
Than
I was going to say
ambiguous.
Nolan does that in this movie, which you need, but he doesn't
very
overdo it to where I think somebody like Crichton or Spielberg or anybody else who would have handled this story, it would have definitely been a, oh, woe is me through the whole fucking movie. What am I doing? And he has that in here. Don't get me wrong, but just enough to where it's, yeah.
Because it is heavy-handed. It is what I refer to as the problem with society in general. When we look back on history, we need to look at it more open-minded and don't look at it with our modern eyes. You need to look at it more as the period, and it allows you to give a lot more latitude to those characters, because they didn't know how to handle hazmat materials back then, and they didn't show it in the film, but we know that one of the scientists got killed. Horrible fucking death. They show it in Fat Man and Little Boy with Paul Newman and John Cusack. God, don't you miss John Cusack? Why did he have
before he went nuts?
Oh my God, he's insane.
But I love his
movies.
So bad.
Oh man.
But I would really love to hear what Steven and Martin think about this, because they haven't really gotten a chance to.
Well, we're going to come back. We got to do our commercial break here in a moment. I do want to say something, because I've ignored the chat and I really feel bad when I do that. But when you and I get talking, I forget things, and our audience is wonderful. Penny is here, Anima Confusa, love of my life, even though Martin called it Von Fusa. What was that about, Martin?
I was confused when I was typing.
Okay, sure. Admiral Teague is here, good friend of mine. Everybody stand, go subscribe to Admiral Teague's Save Star Trek channel. He's under attack right now. He got doxxed yesterday by a douche nozzle. And a good friend of mine. I love the guy. Great channel. I love going on there with Keith and talking Star Trek. You should do it, Tom. They're a really good channel. They get really good discussion. Of course, Deleted Scenes, who is also here on the show with us. Peter Vinkman's site, Vinkman's Girl on Twitter. Our Muslim uncle, Assalamu alaikum, Muslim uncle. Joe's Atmosphere, 6, Sagacious 6, Jedi 6. No matter what, she's 6. FKH, also known as Tim. Christopher Moonlight Productions is here. He joined us yesterday on TGIF. Let's see. Christian Delorme, how are you doing, my friend? Matt Vader is here. What's up, Matt? Emotionally Unstable Amphibian is here. Boosh McFadden. Boosh, of course, is so bushy, he looks like a 70s porno. Kingsport Cal, Willie the Monkey King's Music, DG Ronnie G, D Bud Martin, Hamdinger, Disney Sheepherder, Real Wade Nation is here, and of course, our dear friend Shanazi. So, with that, Martin, do your thing.
Wait, before that, we need to address.
What?
By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
Tim?
That and Real Wade, he has made a bridge twice.
Oh, okay, let's get that over with.
Oh, wait. I'm looking for the special of the day.
You had one job, Martin. You had one job.
Where did this? Oh, man. Wait and see.
I don't like the idea of it going out the back door.
Yeah, I like that you did that. That's great.
Nice.
You got any more? Or is that it?
No, well, let's give it other.
All right.
Let's go through the back door.
Oh, a new one. I like that one. Jigsaw. All right. Not my favorite. I don't like him as an actor, but anyway, we can get into that another day. All right. Let's do it. Commercial break. Merch break. Tom doesn't have my shirt. I'm cooler than Tom. I cannot hear any of the audio right now. Something's going on with StreamYard. None of the audio from the videos. But anyway, let's restart the video. Restart the slideshow.
The best thing with continue. No, the best thing with StreamYard errors is it is not the same error for everyone. Each of us has a different error.
Has our own individual experience with the shitty side of StreamYard. You're right. Okay, so Tim is in the audience, and he sent me a message, and the message reads as this, and I don't know if this is important, Tom. I will find out. He says, I would add, when I was watching the Queen Elizabeth II funeral procession stuff, the American stations all talked when the music was playing. The BBC and the like, no talking, but maybe a word or two here and there. Sometimes you need to hear the music and not have any talking over it. I agree with that. No.
Well, and again, it's not a exact science, but there's a little bit of a way to how it works is like, look at most movies, at least the ones that are most emotional to you. If you have a monologue, sure, you'll have a score sometimes underneath it, but it usually doesn't raise or get swollen until the end. Like you brought up the Indianapolis speech. Like I'm pretty sure there's a bit of a score underneath it, but it doesn't distract you. Like I couldn't hum it to you.
I don't recall one, but I'm going to go back and watch it.
But another great I do remember near the end there being a little bit of like music, but I can't. Like I said, I couldn't hum it to you. But now, on the other example I can think of is Independence Day, where you have the score playing throughout, the president's speech, and it doesn't blow up until the end, right? That's how you do that, is during a monologue. But when you have two characters talking face to face to each other, unless it's during an action sequence where you're trying to keep the pace moving along. You don't do that. You'll come into a scene where you'll have maybe like a bit of music to set the tone of the scene. Then you'll have the two actually have their dialogue moment. Then as you're leaving the scene, you'll usually hold on one or two of them with just a swell of music happening, leading you into the next scene. That's normally how something is scored. You don't want to sit there and have music constantly playing underneath the dialogue. Guess what? It turns into fucking soap opera then. Watch a goddamn soap opera, because that's all they are. It's where people are talking and you got do 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 do.
Yeah, right.
Do 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 playing underneath them the whole fucking time to tell you how to feel. Because if the dialogue is good enough, it shouldn't have to be, the music shouldn't be there to tell you how to feel, right? You know how to feel by the way the characters are interacting.
Yeah, the music should echo what you're feeling, but it should be really saved for moments when, you don't have dialogue helping you. The dialogue should help you.
And it usually, like I said, it doesn't come until nearly the end. That's usually when you save it for, right? To hit the point home, whatever it is that's being said.
And I love how John Williams, made that conscious decision.
Oh, he's a king of that. King of that.
Saving Private Ryan, no music over the battle scenes, because the battle sounds itself is its own soundtrack.
Elfman's even amazing at that. Even though Elfman did a lot of his early stuff was very Mickey Mouse, don't get me wrong, but you know what? He figured it out.
Family Guy did a great job of poking fun at him.
And what I mean by that is, for those who don't know, is like, okay, Mickey Mouse scoring is when you actually score every little diddly-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo, bum-bum.
Yep.
Boom, 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 boom. That kind of stuff. Like with every movie, like watch Batman Returns. That has a very Mickey Mouse score. Compared to like Spider-Man, when you get 10, 15 years into him doing scores, it's a little different. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, very cartoon score.
Yep.
But it works. It works for those movies at the time they came out. But he's brilliant in that respect. He just had to mature, right? And you're right. Like the masters, the Jerry Goldsmiths, all these guys knew exactly how to score these movies. They would do what their director would tell them to. But I'm sure 9 times out of 10, they would be like one of those people who would go like, you sure you want the music here, man? Like, you don't want to have this during the dialogue scene, that's what they'd probably tell somebody like Nolan.
Well, and to go back with John Williams.
Yeah, it does.
John Williams started at,
Williams
started at, what's that? What did he say?
Does the music stop in Star Wars? It runs a lot. It's very traditional score. Even in some of the dialogue scenes, yes, there's some music, but it's very much usually just like 1 or 2 instruments playing underneath, and then you don't hear the swell until after. Like a great example is the scene between Uncle Owen and Luke, right? Where they're talking about
Uncle Owen and Luke, and also the scene with Leia and Luke after Obi-Wan gets killed.
Yeah, there's still music there, but it's not until the end of the scene where it swells.
And then it swells. Yep. And but to go back to John Williams started out as a jazz pianist. That's all he wanted to be.
Right.
But then he became a protege to Henry Mancini, the great composer who created the Pink Panther theme, is what he's best known for. But he's worked with some of the greats, and Mancini was the teacher mentor for John Williams. And so everything John Williams would use later, he learned from Henry Mancini. And that's why he went into the profession, just took off. I mean, his first gig was doing the incidental music for Gilligan's Island.
Mancini doing some of the greatest themes. And I think that's where John Williams probably picked up on the idea of you got to make these themes, right? And that's what Williams does best, right? He's very
theme oriented. Yes, he is.
He'll write 2 or 3 different themes for each film, and he'll mix them in different ways. Not mix, but he'll compose them in different ways throughout the film. And he even says this in interviews, like if it's, it's a happier scene, it'll be a major key. If it's a bit more of a scarier scene, well, then he'll put it in a minor key,
minor key, or an emotional one, minor key.
Yeah.
But when you look at he did the cartoony stuff like Danny Elfman did, but I think he did it better because
it depends on the
Gilligan's
movie.
Island. No, I'm talking about Gilligan's Island.
Yeah. Well, that's a TV show that was basically a cartoon anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But when he would turn around, he would do stuff for Lost in Space, which was better. In fact, he even said, I can do a better theme. And so by the time they got to the 3rd season, he wrote the theme that we all remember to this day for Lost in Space. Everybody forgets
that's kind of where he made a name for himself, isn't it? That's kind of where he made a name for himself, was basically that. But
he immediately
no.
went
Yeah,
from that
you're 100% right.
He went from making Lost in Space to doing Jane Eyre and the Peter O'Toole movie where he's the teacher, Mr. Chips.
Oh, okay.
He did the soundtrack for those two after Lost in Space, and that was it. He was moving on up.
Then he was Spielberg's boy from there on out.
Yeah, Spielberg met him very early in his career and swore by him. And it's because of Spielberg that we got John Williams for Star Wars. Because Williams, because Spielberg and
because he wanted Goldsmith.
Yeah, he wanted Jerry Goldsmith, and he'd already had the score because he put together Wagner, Orff, all these different composers for the music for the film, and then gave it to John Williams. And John Williams took that.
Yeah, and there's that. Who's that one artist? Who's the one that he stole? Not stole, but like the Planets one. Yeah,
it's the Planets
because he used that in the temp score, and and there was a lot of times George was like, just do something like that.
Yeah, just do something like that. That's a good George Lucas.
Well, that's kind of the way a lot of these directors and composers have run into a lot of problems in recent years. And Andre's been wanting to do a video for this for a while, but he hasn't been able to figure out how to structure it. But basically, you have the problem with the temp scores, where a lot of these directors will fall in love with whatever temp score they're using. And this is where a lot of guys like Jerry Goldsmith and some of the greats get accused. Well, they get accused of copying themselves. And it's like, well, it's not my fault. They use the temp score and then they just want me to do the same music. So you get to a point where literally Jerry Goldsmith uses the same cues in multiple films.
Oh, the guitar thing that he does. His son does it too.
Well, like in the Burbs and Gremlins 2 have similar cues, or the exact same cues, I should say. And some other, and that's the other thing. When Jerry was getting older, he just got to a point where it's like, I'm not going to waste my time rewriting my fucking music. What's the point?
Just grab this together. Yeah, I'm not going to work.
No, I'm not kidding. Like, I have the soundtrack to like, there's a couple of his soundtracks out of the 80s and 90s that he literally lifts the same pieces and puts them in each one of the movies, because I guarantee you that's what happened. Was the directors used a piece of his prior, and he's just like, I'm not going to recompose it. I'll just use that same exact piece. Like, I shit you not, like a good 30% of the Burbs and Gremlins 2 are the exact same score. I'm not even kidding. I mean, he wrote new themes and stuff for the Burbs, but there's a bunch of the ancillary music in there that's used in Gremlins 2 as well, that he probably wrote for something else prior to that. I don't know, because he did that so many times. I just remember the composer's name, Holst. Holst, that's it. Yes, thank you.
The Planets. Yeah. But I was in band, orchestra. Not orchestra, I was in band. I wanted to be in orchestra, but I couldn't learn. My left hand's useless. I can only use like these two fingers because I broke my wrist when I was a kid, and it made these two fingers fucking weak. So I can't do strings very well. But I wanted to be an orchestra, but I ended up playing in band, and we had so much music, and our favorite music always there was John Williams. We would just lose our shit. And I don't know about you, dude. There's something that happens when I listen to a John Williams score of a specific movies, Superman in particular. The Superman theme will cause my throat to tighten, and I get very choked up listening to his themes. No other composer can do that.
That's my favorite score of his. Yeah,
Superman, Raiders, Star Wars doesn't do it, but Princess Leia's theme will do it. And
Star Wars is good, but you can tell it was definitely him doing his version of the planets. I mean,
right.
But no, Superman, I find to be one of the most rousing and brilliant scores ever written for a movie. Like, I love the story because it's so true when Richard Donner says he ruined the first take because he got all excited because he was listening to the score, and he goes, "It says Superman. It literally sings Superman." And John's like, "I'm glad you like it. Now get the fuck out of here because you just ruined my take."
But it's true.
But I really want to hear
back to, like,
Stephen and Martin
Fleischer's. Yes, we need to listen because you and I mean,
we've gone on for way too long. They've been too polite.
But I do want to point out that every Superman theme has Superman in the music. You
kind of, yeah.
Fleischer did it, and the original Superman TV.
Superman.
Same thing with Fleischer. Go back and listen to that, and you can hear Superman in the music phrasing. And I love that. And John Williams did it too. But the minute you hear the bum 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 bum, when that kicks in, my throat will get so fucking tight, and the 13-year-old boy me comes out. And
well, because there's so much going on in that theme, right? You've got the bumps, right?
Yep.
And you've got the little
what's coming is why.
The little smaller version of it, and then when the main boom just hits you, it's just like every fucking bit of that orchestra kicks in, and it's just like you are transcended beyond what music can do at that point. But anyway, yeah.
I'm friends with Agent 9, who did the fan edit of Man of Steel, where he fixed the color on the uniform, the costume, and he made some changes in the edits to fix the story. More importantly, he put John Williams' music back in. And I have that if you ever want it in HD.
I might, if it makes some of the changes that I did in my script doctoring of it.
The only way you will know is if you watch it and you tell me.
Yeah.
But I loved it because I get emotional watching it, because he put the Williams theme all the way into the beginning of the film and made it begin the same way as the Superman movies did, where you see the destruction of Krypton, then it goes into the letters coming at you, the names coming at you in 3D, and the logo and the music. It is just, I really loved it. I loved what he did. And that was Agent 9. Absolute good fan edit.
Speaking of scores, and then we'll toss it over to Martin and Steven here, because I really, really, really want to hear what they have to say about this movie.
Wait. First, I need you, Gerry, to read this comment from Anima.
Why isn't she on the show? Because she didn't watch the movie?
Because she likes to shit on me in the chat.
Oh.
And you scare her for some reason, Tom.
I do. I'm sorry. Gerry, you didn't read it. Wanted to be an orchestra, but he was a drummer and they needed musicians. Oh.
That's a variation of Courtney's joke. She said something, what was that, on Toxic Tuesday? She says, you want to know how to shut a drummer up? Put sheet music in front of him. And I went, hey, I know how to read sheet music.
But yeah, speaking of the soundtrack thing, it's funny because even though Zimmer didn't do the score for this, I wonder if part of the reason wasn't so much Dune 2 is that, no, I was just reading here that Nolan didn't want any drums in the score. And that's all Zimmer does.
Yep.
And the reason he didn't want drums in the score, the reason he didn't want drums in the score is because he didn't want to invoke anything towards the military, or this being a military positive story. So he said no drums. So I think that would have hand-tied Zimmer real quick.
Yeah. What you mean? I can't put percussion in it? None. The best soundtrack, by the way, for Hans Zimmer, I want to point out, is his take on Vangelis with Blade Runner 2049.
Well, he used to do really good stuff. I don't know what the fuck happened to him.
Back in the day, something happened to him. I agree.
He got really weird and just
lazy.
I don't know if he dropped some bad acid or
I consider it a form of laziness.
He just got uber experimental, and it's like, okay, but a 3-year-old could do that.
I despise his Superman soundtrack for Man of Steel.
I do too, and I don't even understand how Andre loves it, because here is the theme to Superman in Man of Steel. Boom, boom, boom.
It's not even a theme. Wait, do you understand?
Doesn't that evoke anything? That was accurate, kids. Go listen to it. That's all it is. Boom.
There's a hint of an Irish note progression in there. It sounds like
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do that right.
Boom, boom, boom.
There, I added some echo.
Echo. Oh, here he is. Gary Oldman is Harry Truman. Yeah. This is my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, Gary Oldman's always a welcome. Yeah.
And when he's walking away to exit the Oval Office, he says, "Don't you ever bring that crybaby back."
Yeah, and I brought this up in the back, and then we got to turn this over to the other boys. The line about Harry S. Truman, "Don't you ever bring that crybaby back here ever again," is historically factual, I guess. Truman did actually say that to his staffer after meeting Oppenheimer, and he also mockingly handed him a handkerchief as portrayed in the film. Reportedly, he added, "Blood on his hands, damn it. I have twice as much on mine."
Yeah, he's acting like he's the only one with blood. And it's like, I'm the one who dropped the bomb, you dumb son of a bitch.
He pulled the trigger, not him, yeah. But anyway, so Martin, what did you think of the film?
Well, I only saw it today, merely an hour before the show started, and I gotta say I love the film. It's great. It's a great film. It mixes reality with dramaticality, but it's well done, in my humble opinion. I see myself rewatching this. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to too. Even though I wish I had a TV where I can watch 4K. I can only watch in 1080. It's the highest resolution I have. But I got to tell you, I still think it's beautiful in 1080.
Hello.
Yeah.
Stephen, you got anything to add, my friend? There's Grimes, by the way. That's Scott Grimes in the background.
No way.
Yeah, I know. I didn't even recognize him.
It was his voice. When he spoke, I went, that's fucking Scott Grimes.
Yeah, that's
Steve from American Dad.
Yeah. That's one of the great things about this movie. It's a real actor's movie. I mean, everybody is like a fucking chameleon in this thing. You know, I was watching it. Like I said, I watched it again a couple of days ago, and I had forgotten who all was in this movie because everybody just disappears into their roles. You're not dealing. You are not dealing with Cillian Murphy anymore. You're dealing with Oppenheimer. You're not dealing with Matt Damon anymore. You're dealing with General Groves. You know, even the smaller parts, like the Scott Grimes, like Josh Hartnett, that guy from that magician show. I can't remember the name of the show. That guy's in here for like a minute and a half, and again, barely recognizable. And that's the thing that for me is the power of the film, you know. Is that the acting across the board is so good, you know. And finally, a movie out of Hollywood that's not preaching some fucking agenda at me. That's another thing. You know,
it's not very political.
No,
it's very. Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, do you think this movie's going to struggle getting any nominations because it does not live up to the Oscar standard?
Yeah, it doesn't take a stand. It doesn't.
Well, no, I mean it doesn't have any black people in the cast at all. Or any other people that aren't really white. Let's be real.
They'll forget about that, I think, because they're going to realize that, you know, they're only going to have like The Color Purple and American Fiction, and that'll be it. And but
don't forget Barbie.
Yeah, Barbie, yeah. And I've said this before on, you know, my show. Barbie's going to get nominated for Best Picture, folks. Just accept
it. Will.
Fact.
I believe you. I believe you. I've said it. You watch. It's going to get Oscar nominated for at least probably 7 or 8 Oscars.
Oh, at
between
least.
Best Picture, Best Screenplay, cinematography.
Did you like it, Tom?
No, I fucking hated it. But
I won't watch it. I have no interest in ever seeing
I liked the first 20 minutes. After that, it goes to shit. But it'll also get nominated for the costumes. It'll get nominated for a bunch of other things. No, you're 100% right, Steven. And I don't know if it'll win, but it will. And because it falls into it has enough of a diverse cast and diversity with it all to where it will fall in that category. But you were saying.
Yeah, but I believe Oppenheimer is going to get a number of nominations. I can't see where it would miss. You know,
it doesn't reach the requirements.
You know where
that's the problem.
Win?
I think
you know where it won't win. You know where it won't win?
Where?
Sound mixing.
I wonder if it'll get Best Picture though, Steven. I think it might get snubbed.
It
You
could
could be
get it.
right, but
if it gets snubbed, then there is absolutely nothing left. The Academy may as well just fucking resign and go home.
Look,
at that point.
they haven't been any
That
good since
should have happened
2000s.
decades
It's
ago,
just
my friend.
garbage. Yeah. They lost any credibility with most of us starting in the 2000s. But
Well,
I
now,
want
Steve-
to point something out, Stephen, and I'm curious your
it was
thoughts on
before
this.
that.
There's another historic film that I think this really lines up with in its casting and the way it was made. And the film I refer to is The Right Stuff, made back in 1983.
Yes.
Because the casting in
Love that movie.
the way it presented the story, no politics, just told the story. This film and that one almost feel like they belong in the same collection. What do you think?
Well, and then didn't The Right Stuff lose to what was it?
Oh, that was 83. So
it would have been. That's what I was trying to remember now, because there was people bitching about that one too. But go ahead and bring up your thoughts. I'll look it up.
Was it Out of Africa?
I think it was
Out of Africa. Out of Africa.
85.
Was 85. Yeah.
I'll look it up while you give your thoughts on the other part, though.
Please.
Well, the Academy Awards was actually in 84, and let's see, it got nominated for Best Picture. It was nominated for Best Actor with Sam Shepard. Nominated for Best Cinematographer, Caleb Deschanel. That's Zoe Deschanel's grandfather, I think. Let's see, and Best Sound with Mark Berger. It won for Best Sound. It won for Best Film Editing. It won for Best Sound Effects.
Terms of Endearment won.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Bill Conti. This was Bill Conti's second Oscar, because Bill Conti got it for Rocky, and then he got it for this movie, for the soundtrack of The Right Stuff.
Yeah, because I remember when The Right Stuff came out in theaters, and there were people who wanted to avoid it because John Glenn was running for president at the time, and a lot of people thought that the movie was kind of like his political highlight reel, and they ignored it. And my dad was actually one of them, because my dad drove me and my mom to the theater, because he got to a point where he didn't like going to the movies after a while, and he pulled up and he saw the poster and went, "Oh, it's that goddamn political movie. Oh, well, have fun, kid."
Oh, Terms of Endearment.
That's what I just said.
For 84.
He wasn't listening.
Oh, you got it. I wasn't listening. I'm sorry. I was reading. I apologize.
No, that's all right. No, but I'm curious. We'll see. You might be right, Stephen, because this might be where they figure out that these fucking rules are not going to work.
Yeah, because they're going to be down to like just having 2 or 3 movies to nominate, and they're going to realize that they've painted themselves into such a corner that they're just going to have to throw all this DEI crap out the window. It's
yeah. I think I was thinking of
Go ahead. No. Yeah, I was done. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I think the year I was thinking of was when Chariots of Fire beat out something else.
Chariots of Fire beat out Raiders.
That's it. That's what I was thinking of. But yeah, I wonder if this will get nominated, because I know Barbie's going to get all the nominations.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how this works out. Yeah.
But to me,
the best films that were nominated for 1984 were The Big Chill, Tender Mercies, Terms of Endearment, The Dresser, and The Right Stuff.
Yep.
Damn good list.
Yeah. No, yeah. The 80s and 90s, the point where, and this is what you were getting to, Gary, the moment that the Oscars went awry was, we call it English Patient Zero. Because this is the moment where Weinstein figured out that he could buy up the Oscars. And from that moment on, you had a bunch of movies win, like Shakespeare in Love was the one where everybody went, wait a minute. And stuff that, because that beat like Saving Private Ryan, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
And everybody's like, what the
movie.
fuck is going on here? Like, so yeah, from that moment on until Weinstein pretty much ran out of money and power, it was mostly Weinstein winning the awards. Outside of a few highlights like Titanic, you could consider a highlight, and only because it wasn't a Weinstein film, and the Lord of the Rings getting some, attention and a few things like that. Otherwise, it was very much dominated by this idea that Weinstein was going to buy up the awards. So the other films that were getting nominated after that were movies that nobody fucking watched, right? Because that's the problem. That's the big difference you have between the 80s and 90s. Because, there was some pretentious films and usually nominated for Best Picture. But even out of that list of 83, I guarantee you've seen at least 3 of those films that we just listed, right?
Well, now they've done this thing where foreign films used to have their own section.
But don't even get me fucking started on that, man. Parasite one, I was so pissed.
Oh, that's such a dumb fucking movie.
Over that movie. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I'm like, you motherfuckers, that was Quentin's Oscar and you took it from him.
It was Quentin's
Wasn't that same year?
Movie.
Was it a different year I'm thinking of? But either way, I was pissed about that. I'm like, why is a foreign film winning Best Picture? That's what the foreign film categories are for, you dumbasses.
Yeah, you can't take them serious anymore. The Oscars are garbage. I lost interest in them in the 2000s because of that shit with Weinstein. It's like the People's Choice Award is really the one I pay attention to. That and the Emmys. I like the Emmys.
Well, I remember a lot of people freaked out when Forrest Gump won too. That was the other one that I remember prior to.
Because the
that
problem,
was 95.
The problem with Gump is that Gump was safe.
Yes, it should have been either Shawshank or Pulp Fiction.
Shawshank or Pulp Fiction, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
The 2 best films of the year didn't even have a chance when it came to the fucking retard.
Mama
I'm
says.
Sorry. I know that's not politically correct, but it's fucking true. They made a movie. Look, I love Forrest Gump, but it is not a Best Picture kind of movie. It is one of Zemeckis' least films. It's right above shit like his Beowulf remake and stuff like that. If you really think about it in the grand scheme of things.
Do you know what's great about that film for me?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Even fucking Romancing the Stone is still technically better than Forrest Gump. Let's be real. It's a good movie, but it's not like fucking Oscar caliber. It got all the Oscars because they were like,
I gotta tell you though, Tom.
Oh my God, they got John Lennon in the same scene in JFK.
Nixon's in there. I'm gonna tell you personally, that movie does have great value to me, but for a different reason.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But yeah.
It's where Tom Hanks became introduced to Dale Dye, my boss.
Well, that's cool.
And
no, I'm not trying to shit on Forrest Gump, but like,
I'm saying that is the only real value of that film for me.
Because, it's not Oscar worthy. That's my point.
You heard what happened. That when I was working on that film and I woke up on Valentine's Day morning, I worked for Tom Hanks, and I'm like, oh great, I work for Tom Hanks, And I went through my day, and then I finished, went to bed, woke up the next morning at dark 30, went, oh my God, I work for Tom Hanks, and it finally hit me after 24 hours. Oh fucking shit, he's my boss. So what do? I turned right around and I made this joke and it got back to him. I said, Tom Hanks can only play 2 characters, Forrest Gump and Tom Hanks. And I was told that he heard that. Somebody read it to him, what I said. And he says, Tom Hanks didn't say anything. He just went,
Well, he's pretty humble, I guess. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know much about the guy. I've never heard bad stories. I've heard some of the strange accusations.
Nice
I don't know what to believe on that shit. I'm not going to say one way or the other on that part. That's not.
I will tell you this from personal experience: nobody has treated my boss better in Hollywood.
He seems like a very genuinely nice guy.
And Gary Sinise.
That's all I can say.
Gary Sinise. Well, Gary Sinise and Tom Hanks absolutely treat Dale Dye like a king when he's around, and which is the way he should be treated. Spielberg didn't direct any of the combat scenes for Saving Private Ryan, not one of them. He would sit in his chair forming a plan for Medal of Honor video game, while Dale directed all of the combat scenes, and then gave him no credit for it. He gets 0 credit for directing all those scenes. There were no other directors, just Dale Dye directing all the combat scenes for Saving Private Ryan. And people want to know why I don't like Spielberg. And I said, there's one reason. He also lied to him with the movie War Horse. Said that they had to use, by law, they had to use a British company. And Dale's company was like, well, we have a branch in England that you could use. You know that. Spielberg was just being a fucking dickhead. Tom Hanks won't do that to him. Tom Hanks swears by Dale Dye. Oh, is this the scene where we find out what it was said between them?
We're getting up to that, yeah.
Yes. And then Einstein talks about how in the future he'll get this ward and everybody will be there and everybody shaking hands except for she won't shake hands with hydrogen bomb guy because she knows he betrayed him. He might forgive him, because he shook his hand. They show that, and she got angry at Oppenheimer for shaking his hand. He betrayed you.
That is something that actually happened, I guess. Not only that, he cried over it. It says here, the scene of Kitty Oppenheimer refusing to shake Edward Teller's hand after his negative testimony at the Oppenheimer security hearing happened in real life. Teller cried over Kitty's public rejection. What a pussy.
Good. Yeah. Oh, man. Never forget that movie. I love Hank's bachelor party movie. That shit was awesome.
Do you know that Tom Hanks
was
played Mahoney?
Meatballs. I'm not surprised because that's within his wheelhouse.
That was technically who it was written for. Yeah.
And it's so
Steve
funny.
Gutenberg came in and they loved him so much. They're like, yeah, we'll have it. That's what we should do.
We're going to have him next.
What?
Do that one next.
We should do Police Academy. I love Police Academy.
There's no question. I liked 1 and 2 the most.
1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 and 4 are my 2 favorites, but yeah, yeah, I get you.
Because I've watched them all, but there's a scene I think in the 4th. Is it the 4th one where? And it's a YouTube video, and I went, yeah, because when the guy comes out after firing this weapon and he's waving the weapon around, everybody's ducking except for Tackleberry.
Oh yeah. That's what's his face, the fat guy. Yeah,
Tackleberry wouldn't duck because he knows that there's no round in the chamber. He knows it's empty.
Yeah.
Everybody else is freaking out, but
we really need to talk.
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
I loved Tackleberry when he died, man. That actor.
I was really
David
sad
Graff. By that shit, dude.
That was too bad.
Because I really got into those characters. I enjoyed the fucking Police Academy movies, even the bad ones. I still enjoyed them.
I watched them again this last week because Shout just put them out again, and they are. They're like comfort food. Yeah, they're fucking comfort food, man. That. And the first movie does not get as much credit as it should for being as good and tight of a comedy as it is.
It was innovative too for the kind of comedy.
Yeah, well, it risen above. It was initially supposed to be like a Stripes ripoff, but then it ended up becoming so much better in a way. Not better than Stripes, but better in its own right as its own.
Well, you've got. Let's go down the line because the first one of that kind of comedy was Animal House. Then Stripes was the next version.
Yes.
And then Police Academy and Meatballs.
Yep. You know, well, Meatballs was before Police Academy, but yeah.
Was it? I was trying to
remember that was one of Bill Murray's first big ones. That was what, 80, 81?
It was an early film for him, that's right. But Steve Gutenberg also did a summer camp movie. And nobody ever remembers that thing. And I can't find a copy of it anywhere. It's a made for TV one where he had some of that same kind of comedy that Bill Murray would do. So
79 is Meatballs.
79.
Yeah.
Holy shit. These were innovative comedies. They were really pushing the
Caddyshack was the other one in between there too.
You and I, Caddyshack and the horny one with the young high school kids.
Oh, Porky's.
Because you and I did that show, Toxic Tuesday, together, didn't we? Where we talked about that movie. And right there, that is it. That is your packet of the edgy comedies that really helped shape the future of comedy movies, from that point forward. And I think that the late 70s going into the 80s nailed it. And then after the 80s, it just sort of died. That's why all the scary movies are just not very good. Because that kind of comedy doesn't work today. Airplane comedy doesn't work today.
I would love to see them bring back Police Academy with a new generation, because you could basically have Steve Gutenberg's the age now. He played Commandant. Yeah, he played Commandant Mahoney. And I mean, really, at this point, he looks
I can hardly wait to see the blowjob scene.
Yeah, well, you don't have to remake. That's the thing, is you don't even have to remake it. That's the best part. You just have him and Jones being the two that carry us over from the original series, and you have a new group of recruits, and you make it even funnier because, like, the beginning of the original one was, the whole point was, you know, they opened it up to where anybody could join the academy now, and the police naturally panicked. But like the gimmick then was they could flunk them out after a few weeks. Well, now it's even worse because in this new political correctness day and age, just, you know, that we have now, the woke day and age, like, you can have literally anybody join. So like that's, you can even play with that a little more. Like, you get a guy in a wheelchair who decides he wants to be a cop and all this other shit. Like, it's taking it one step farther than the original one was. And you can even put in place that they can't get rid of some of these people even if they wanted to, or something like that. And that's the thing. You get enough funny people together, it could work.
And absolutely, you can also show the comedy of how their bad ideas turned out. Like that video that Mexican Iron Man posted of those 4 or 5 female cops trying to take one guy down, and they couldn't get him. He ends up getting away from him. And this is real. You know, it's like they don't know how to fucking get this guy in handcuffs.
Well, and that's kind of the humor of Police Academy, right? It's this riffraff, you know, ragtag group of people that shouldn't be able to do what they're doing, but they end up being really good cops despite, you know, being pushed down by everybody around them. I mean, you can play with that. People like that aspect of it. And I mean, that's the thing. You can be diverse. The Police Academy is so diverse. People don't even bring that fact up, right? Like Bubba Smith gets second billing, for fuck's sake. Top billing in part 6 and 5, I believe. I think he gets top billing. And then you have, you know, Christ, we should just save this for the conversation we have over Police Academy. But yeah, get back to Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
But like,
this is something you know.
Yeah, Michael Winslow is the other one I was going to bring up, because that character was directly written for him. Like, that part wasn't even in the movie originally. They saw him live and they're like, we got to fucking put this guy in the movie.
We got to put this guy in. Yeah, exactly. But you've got so much good stuff in there, and you've got such defined characters.
Absolutely, we know them all by name.
What's her name? Hooks is one of my favorite characters in the franchise, because she's so demure and polite and sweet and quiet, and then she just gets up and gets gnarly all of a sudden. I fucking love that shit. I enjoyed her. Kim Cattrall back when she was hot.
Oh, you
know, Gutenberg.
The thighs. Show me the thighs.
He was the other Bill Murray back in the 80s, dude.
Absolutely, yeah.
He was the other Bill Murray.
And that's why I think they went with him instead of Tom Hanks, because Tom Hanks ain't the Bill Murray type, right? Like, he was okay in Bachelor Party, but
they've absolutely, Steve Gutenberg would have been better in Bachelor Party.
Oh, yeah.
I'm wrong.
See, Steve Gutenberg plays that role. He plays that lovable perv, right? There's only certain guys who can get away with being that pervy and still be charming, right?
And what
Tom
Hanks
Hanks really isn't one of them. Bill Murray and Gutenberg are. Those two guys could pull that shit off.
Gutenberg started off dramatic. And a lot of people don't know this. Like, his first movie role was in The Boys from Brazil with Olivier and Gregory Peck.
Then he did Diner before Police Academy,
Yeah, Diner, dude. I love that movie.
Yeah. And he played the asshole brother, the big brother, yeah.
He's a jerk. He was playing more dramatic roles. And then all of a sudden, somebody found out he's got a niche for comedy. And he really does. And he, of course, sabotaged his own career when he did that whole beefing up thing. That was so... Him and Joe Piscopo sabotaged their careers by doing that whole physical fitness thing, and they got too buff.
Well, and I don't know, there was probably other things. We could probably get into that next week, but back to Oppenheimer, we should probably, unless we're going to wrap it up here soon. So I don't know how far we got into the video.
We still got 15 minutes, so I don't know, but you and I and Keith and I have very similar relationships with one another, because you and I are very passionate about film. We're true cinephiles, and we have our specific niches where we really get into focus. And Keith and I have them in certain ways, and then you and I connect in a way, because I really do. I always feel so connected when you and I are talking about film, because we are very kindred spirits in how we like our comedies, the kind of comedies we like, how that comedy is delivered to us, and we actually determine and base it, because you review a film not off of how all films should be, but based off of other films in that genre, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's logical. But some people don't do that. They want to base every
well, we're
comedy
video
off of how
store
dramatic.
kids. That's the other
Yes.
thing is we're a generation that grew up with cable in the
Blockbuster
video
kids.
store.
Family
Like we grew
video
up
and all that shit.
watching these movies over and fucking over and fucking over and over and over and over and over again. And that's why we can Oppenheimer we've both all seen once. Is it a great movie? Yes. Is it probably one of the best movies of the year? Yes. At the end of the day, what kind of rating do I give it? I give it like a 9 out of 10. It's definitely an excellent fucking film. It's creeping farther and farther up my list the more I talk about it. But no, I'm just more reminded by, yeah, this is a good movie, but it's not as good as the
Well, now that I get the metaphor of the apple,
yeah,
I really have less to complain about, because that was the one thing I had a beef about, because it's real big. Like, did that even happen? You know, because it was just based off of one thing he said. But now that I look at it, it's like, I'm kind of glad he grabbed that, because it really does work as a metaphor for the rest of his life. Because I do the same thing in one of my scripts where I made up a fictional moment with my grandfather for The Bastard's Drum when I talked about his experiences in World War I. And he got buried alive in combat. It really happened. His bunker got hit by a German, I don't know what they used. It wasn't 155, so I can't remember what millimeter they used. But it hit the door of the bunker and it buried everybody, killed the 2 guys at the door, buried everybody else in dirt. And I wanted to show why this was so horrifying to him by having him, when he was younger, at St. Charles in Illinois. It was Chicago's Boys Town. And he got stuffed into a cellar in the story. Fictional. I made that up just to show why he was so freaked out by being buried alive, and why it was one of the most horrifying experiences of his life. And it made him shake until the day he died. His hands would just shake like this after having that round go off near him and not kill him. And it just fucked my grandfather up. Not to mention, like, all the combat. But going back with Oppenheimer, you know, I like shit like that, where they foreshadow something as the metaphor of the true story of what's going on here. Here's a metaphor of what you're getting ready to see. And then you make that connection with the bomb being
the whole movie. I'm like, I kind of had like watching the movie. Maybe this is to Nolan's credit, is that you feel like you're kind of like one of these guys having an epiphany throughout the film, right? Like, because at the beginning too, like I saw that apple scene, I'm like, holy shit, can't believe the depravity of this guy that he would go to that point. I mean, his ego is that easily bruised like an apple, like that. But then when he, you know, basically poisons the apple, and then you look at it at the broader aspect of the film, and then when you get to that third act, and when it twisted for me, I had that epiphany just like one of these guys would, where something just finally clicks into place, right? Like where you're completely all discombobulated. You got all these numbers and fractions going on in your head, then all of a sudden it just all makes sense. It just did that for me in the movie. Like all of a sudden it just made sense for that last third of the film, especially probably that.
And he doesn't stop the
apple. The half hour, basically the half hour before the last half hour of the film. So the last hour of the film, right? Literally, because I message Andre, I'm like, I fucking love this movie. I see where it's going now. And this was 30 minutes left of the movie, because I even specifically told him, and I still have 30 minutes left. So like at that point, I was like, okay, this movie now just clicked for me, so that, you know, that key fell into place. Like if you're turning, you know, the dial on the safe key, you know, like everything just kind of fell into place for me. Like I knew exactly what I was looking at now, where everything was going. It all just seemed to make more sense to me. Maybe it's just the way the movie was structured, but I loved that aspect of it too, because it felt like I was taking the ride along with these guys, because that's where you can get sucked up into this too.
There's no question about it. It is.
It's like the whole Jurassic Park thing, where you're like, you know, whether you didn't stop to think about whether or not you should. Well, you can kind of see how these guys would get wrapped up into this, and that's how you follow along, because you're like, wait a minute, this is exciting for these guys, because it's historically exactly. So
it's the one true incident where there's proof that scientists did a thing despite knowing it was probably the wrong thing to do. That this is the ramification of this is so bad. But then going back to the apple, because he stops the guy from taking the apple. And again, I want to point out, not because I think he was afraid of him being poisoned, the professor, not what's his name that plays the German. His fear was that the professor was going to give that apple to a horse. Because you see it in his head. He has that image of the horse and the apple. And so that was what his greatest fear is. But then when he gets there, he sees a professor that he respects and admires grab the apple, and then he knocks it out of his hand. But then years later, he's standing there in front of that other apple, the atomic bomb, and
doesn't knock it out of. Yep, he doesn't knock it out of the hand of, in this case, of being the president. But like,
it's the last time he made an ethical decision was when he was younger in school.
Yep. See, and that's where it made sense to me, and I was curious if that's what you, because I mean, you were kind of hung up on the whole.
Well, I see it now. I see it
of
now, and I'm like, oh my god, yeah, that is so obvious. Now, did Nolan mean that? I don't know. He is a very smart dude.
Absolutely, I think he did, and I think
good.
that's why he picked the. I mean, even if it wasn't the apple in real life, I think he would have picked an apple or an orange just simply because of the shape. Right? It is very indicative of the shape of it, and like I said, the apple in itself, like if you look at it as a biblical thing, as you look at it as so many other things, it symbolizes so much, right? And in the creation of, you know, like I said, in the, you know, if you go back to the whole thing with Adam and Eve, and in the Garden of Eden, it's the apple that opens up, you know, the wisdom, right, that they got from the tree, and that's kind of the same symbolism here, because if you look at it, this took us from, you know, the industrial age into the nuclear / technological age.
This was, yeah, that's right.
That was that moment, right?
They split the atom. We're no longer in the industrial age. We're in the atomic age. You're right. And it's such a,
and that's why I said that apple has a big symbolism in the film. Exactly. Like, I think at first when you look at it through the guise of the movie, because it's such a quick part in the beginning, they don't really call back to it like most directors would to make it so obvious. But it was there for me. Like, I seen the symbolism following along, because I didn't even know if it was a true story or not. I didn't even know any of that stuff that you told me until beforehand. And I'm just figuring it was in there just mainly for symbolism. I didn't believe it. So I was like, who the fuck would know it's true unless he actually admitted it at some point in his life anyway? So like, yeah.
I think it's mentioned in American Prometheus. I think it's mentioned in that book.
Yeah, I think it is. And that's what this is based on, if I remember right. But yeah.
The author had interviewed him, and there was this, it was just this little comment that was made. I once tried to poison one of my instructors. Didn't say which instructor, and didn't really go into detail of what he meant by poison, because poison can have a double meaning in a conversation. You know, you can poison a conversation, because that's what, if you think about it, it's exactly what Strauss thinks. Strauss thinks that Oppenheimer has been poisoning all his relationships.
Yep.
When it's been him all along. He did it himself. You know, both of them are tragic villains in their own way. Oppenheimer and Strauss.
See, and that's the other thing. I remember a lot of people were trying to say, "Oh, this movie glorifies Oppenheimer." No, it does not. No, it does not. I walked away.
It shows him as a narcissist.
Yes, thinking it's very egotistical, narcissistic. And he made himself a martyr, like you said at the end of the film, just so he could let himself off the hook. His wife calls it out brilliantly.
Calls him on it. I mean, how can you think it glorifies him when you have a line like that delivered by Emily Blunt? Because she's letting the audience know. She just told the audience, "You did this for yourself to find forgiveness." That's shitty. You know, you abused, disabused, and what a horrible thing to do. She called him out. When you stop and really think of what she said to him in that moment, that destroys his character that he's built in the film of being this tragic character. And he is tragic, don't get me wrong, but he's tragic because of his own decisions.
Yeah, because he tries to pretend like he has this gun. I think you said it, Gary, or whoever said it. Like he pretends like he has this invisible gun to his head the whole time, when you realize, no, he's actually the one with the gun to everybody else's head. That's how he weaseled his way into this whole fucking shit. And that's where it's really poignant with the Matt Damon scene we went back to earlier, where he flat out says, you know, would you hire him now again, knowing all, like, no, I wouldn't hire any of these guys. But he goes, that doesn't reflect on the time, because at that time, everybody knew that he was right. But he was so wrapped up in being right that even at the point where he could have knocked that apple, he didn't. He kept it going, even when he tried to warn others around him. Yeah.
Look at this film, because you'll get the connection here too. Oppenheimer had the opportunity to be like Schindler, because Schindler made a point that he would be very disappointed if they ever made munitions that worked. Remember that in the movie Schindler's List? And he could have easily done the same type of thing. He could have slowed the progress. He could have, like, all he had to do is show concerns over something, and they could have.
Well, that whole idea that they could have the atmosphere thing, like that's why that one guy was so hopped up on it. Is like that should have been something that had put a stop to everything, and really that would have been something that they could have presented to the Russians and everybody else, that they would have made them think twice about continuing.
Well, they're even told that. Show that to the other countries and let them know there's a risk you can destroy the whole planet with one explosion. And they were told to do that. Never did it. They wouldn't do it.
Thank God for that, or we wouldn't have microwave popcorn today.
Amen. Amen. You know,
Sorry, I had to lighten that mood just for a second there.
Well, you look at so much of our technology today that we just use every day, and you realize that the military applications that helped create that, like first microwave was called what? Radar range. It was called that for a reason, because they discovered that there was this microwaves being released by radars when they were using on sun that could cook things. And they're like, well, let's see what that can do. And then they took a military application and turned it into a home appliance. Radar range.
And the real reason behind that is people wanting to find a way to make popcorn at home. Not have to go through all the trouble.
It was all about
really
popcorn,
the main reason. It was this built on this idea. I can't remember who the guy was, but he's like, I want to be able to make popcorn at home and not have to go through all the bullshit, you know. And it just was applied to other things after that. But yeah, and the first microwaves were so fucking expensive, man.
Oh, they were crazy. The only place you could really use a microwave when I was a kid was the local 7-Elevens, because they always had those big industrial ones, and you go in there and you heat up your food. I remember my dad, you know, my dad was a science guy. He was an engineer. And he walked in and grabbed something that had foil on it and put it into a microwave at the 7-Eleven. I'm like, what are you doing? I jumped and I grabbed it. And he goes, what? And I said, the microwaves will like spark when you hit the thing, and it could blow the microwave, reflecting the microwaves back at it. That was something he didn't know. I was like really surprised by that, because my dad was like super intelligent, and that blew my mind. But microwaves, they were great, man, when they first started coming out.
You'd be surprised how much popcorn has to do with the history of America, though. It's really strange how much it's tied in.
I wouldn't. Popcorn and tobacco. I mean, this country was built on tobacco. You know, when people start talking shit about the tobacco industry, I'm like, you wouldn't even have a country if not for tobacco. Seriously. Like, this country would not exist if not for tobacco, because it was tobacco sales, the crops and the selling of it to other countries that made us one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
Let's not forget the coffee. Remember when coffee almost destroyed American economy?
Well, don't forget, we wouldn't have coffee if not for the Pope. It was when the Vatican gave coffee the seal of approval that people started drinking it.
So we are making our own version of Connections.
I love that show, dude. I love that. Did you ever watch that?
Which one?
Connections. It was a BBC PBS show. It was shown here on PBS in the United States.
How old was it? I mean, I may have seen it in passing, but offhand it doesn't.
1978 through 1981, I think, is the first run.
Doubtful. Maybe I saw it in a repeat, but I don't remember offhand.
It was a great show, because basically on the show, the guy would show how this wonderful technology we have today was all due to this one clock made in the 16th century.
I would like that. Yeah. See, because that's kind of where I was coming from with the popcorn thing. Because, like, you know, historians can trace it back where, we've had different kinds of popcorn in different areas, but the modern kind that we have now can be basically traced back to the you know, Native Americans at that time, or indigenous American, whatever the fuck word I'm supposed to use, where they had the specific kind that did pop up most of the kernels, and it popped up better than some of the other ones they had, and it tasted good compared to some of the other ones that they were popping. And so throughout the American history, we found ways of, I don't know if this is,
and they would pop it on the kernel.
They would make hybrids of other kind of corns. And you can literally trace it up to Orville Redenbacher, believe it or not, who's one of the people who pushed it, but like it became famous. Yeah, but it became famous because of sports games and events like that. Popcorn was, getting easier to make in the kettle and stuff like that back in the day. And then, of course, movie theaters were the next big place.
And caramel corn.
Yep.
Caramel corn. Don't forget
for
that.
fairs.
But as I recall, didn't the American Indians pop the corn on the ear?
No, I think they took it off, but they would actually use sand. See, their big thing was,
that what it was?
Oil. Yeah, when we introduced oil to the mix, that was the big difference. They used to use sand to heat it up. And that was another thing where it would be, smaller kernels. But like, that's why I said, once you get Orville Redenbacher in the mix, he was a fucking scientist and a half. Like, I mean, we know him as the guy on the fucking box and in the commercials, but he was an actual real scientist. He actually like changed popcorn. Like, you wouldn't believe it, but he is responsible for pretty much most of what we have as far as advancements in popcorn today. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have
butter and everything.
Just the kernels themselves, because he created he patented a kernel and a method to where almost all the kernels would pop, and then you would actually get full popped kernels. Because before that, like, that's what I was trying to say, is the way popcorn would look, it was like these little itty bitty little, like, they would just basically look like, remember sugar puffs or whatever you call them? They kind of would look like that, only a little bit, just like, and they would be harder, so they'd be harder on your teeth and stuff like that, and they weren't as soft.
So he helped change it to the big puffy
popcorn we have now. So basically, all the popcorn we have can be traced back to him, but he still stayed with the business all that time while also in the background working on scientific advancements. And he fucking, funniest thing is in the world is he hated microwave popcorn. He fucking hated it, but
he liked it done the old way.
Yeah, that's the way he preferred it. He goes, that's the way it was supposed to be done. But it was just one of those things that changed
how
the
we
business.
did it as kids.
Yeah.
We got an air popper when I was about 12, but my favorite was Jiffy Pop. You would get it in a little pie pan with a cardboard cover.
They still make
peel that off, and you put on stuff, and it would puff up like an atomic bomb. I love that.
No, and I had a popcorn maker for a while. In fact, I'm thinking about gifting myself one this Christmas if somebody else doesn't. But I was thinking about getting myself one of those nice popcorn, full-sized.
Like street corner popcorn maker,
theater, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, because I used to have one when I had a video store, and I loved that beast. I mean, I loved it. I constantly popping popcorn, and I gave it away for free, man.
I love that stuff, man. I love real popcorn. I like real butter on it, not that petroleum jelly they use in movie theaters now.
Yeah, we still had one theater in my area that was an old school theater that actually still had buttered popcorn. They closed down now like 20 some years ago, but yeah, I could never find the same stuff since. Yeah.
But I'm really curious. I'm gonna have to look this up about the whole sand thing, because I know sand is used in a lot of cooking.
Yeah, right? I'm pretty sure that unless somebody correct me in the chat if I'm wrong.
Sand retains the heat.
Yep, that's why they would use it.
Heat for a while,
and then they would funnel out the sand.
It makes total sense. Yeah, makes total sense that they would use that. Hey, I want to thank everybody for being here, man. Tom, it's always fun doing these shows with you.
We talk too much, but yes. Do this. Somebody said something about RoboCop. Well, am I having a bad dream? Didn't we do that one already? Or we still haven't done
which
that
one?
Have we done RoboCop yet? I thought we just did.
Yeah, yes, we did.
Yeah, somebody said something about RoboCop in the chat. I was like, we just did that one.
We need to do RoboCop too, because that's actually
the one we need to do. Yes, but I would like to do Police Academy next time or something along those lines. Maybe a Christmas.
Martin, make a note of those two: RoboCop 2 and Police Academy.
Yeah, I'm sure he already has RoboCop 2 on the list.
I want to thank Penny for being here. Anima Confusa, love of my life. Admiral Teague, good on you, mate. I hope everybody goes and subscribes to him. Deleted Scenes, who is also here on the show. Thanks for being here, buddy. The Peter Venkman fan site, Venkman's Girl, Our Muslim Uncle, Joe's Atmosphere.
Or Steven hasn't gotten to talk the whole show.
That's the way he is, though, dude. He just sits there quietly, politely, but he enjoys the conversation. He actually does. I know he does. That's why he keeps coming back. FKHC 2005, aka Tim. Christopher Moonlight Productions was here. Christian Delorme, my good friend from Canada. I have many friends up there, but I love Christian. He is a huge supporter of this show, and nobody throws stripper money at me better than Christian Delorme. Matt Vader, dear friend of, I think he's a friend of both ours, isn't he?
Yeah.
You like him better,
He's one of the
yeah.
Salty Nerd podcast guys.
Well,
Yeah. The rest of them, they're okay. No, I love Salty Nerds. I love those guys.
Gerry,
Emotionally unstable amphibian. Yeah, what?
I wouldn't call it stripper money. I would call it anti-stripper money.
Anti-stripper money.
Yeah.
Tell me he wants to ski naked. Boosh McFadden. King's Port Cal, our dear friend. Willie, the Monkey King's music. DJ Ronnie G was here. D. Bud Martin, and you and I both know him from mostly Toxic Tuesday, where I met him. Ham Dinger, Disney Sheepherder, Real Wade Nation Gaming, who is at 700 subs right now, man. Congratulations, buddy. I think that's what it was last time I looked. We just talked the other night. Shinatsky, what is this? Kalechi Oki?
Yes.
Okay. I don't recognize that name. Is that somebody new?
No, it's somebody new, and I think
All
it's
right, welcome to
from
the show.
FKH.
This is every
He's
other
one
week.
of our regulars.
Yeah, so Tom and I do this every other week, and then in between, Keith and I do Saturday after. We call it now Saturday Fun Time, just Saturday Fun Time, because it doesn't make sense saying morning because we shifted it to the afternoon. Mecha J, Mecha Honey Ho. Jedi Bill is here, dude. Good to see you, man. Lester San Jose, the Skeptic Tank. Words and Pictures. Zach's my buddy Kyle. Hey, play the video, Martin, for him.
Of course, I was waiting for that.
Action Cam and G Gap After Dark was here. Go ahead.
Okay.
Please.
And for you, Kyle?
Hey, fuck you, Kyle.
That was a good movie. Did you see that, Renfield?
Oh, I loved Renfield. Yeah.
I fucking died laughing watching that film, and I had to be revived. I love that.
Well,
why does that not surprise you?
Have you ever laughed so hard that you lose consciousness?
I think maybe during the South Park movie. Between the South Park movie, Basketball,
the original.
Yeah. Well, there's only one,
Basketball,
the theatrical one. Like I remember falling out of the bigger, longer, and uncut. Like between Uncle Fucker thing, I don't think I breathed for like 2 minutes. Like however long the song is, because I was laughing so fucking hard. And then like I remember during Basketball, that part where what's his face from Unsolved Mysteries, Robert Stack, where they're doing the whole thing where they're trying to find Coop or whatever, and he's like, "We've got no fucking clue where this guy is." Just the fact of Robert Stack saying it the way he did, it just made me fucking lose it, and I fell out of my chair. Literally. Like, I mean, like, you hear people say that as a figure of speech. No, I literally laughed so hard, I came up and fell out of my chair like I fell flat ass on the floor.
I feel, dude. I feel for you. I've had it happen twice for me, 2 times. And I didn't pass out, but I blacked out. That meaning that the blood flow was cut off to my eyes and I couldn't see, and I fell. One time I fell on the floor. I just rolled out of the sofa onto the floor. And oddly, one of those moments was in a movie I fucking hated. But it's the rhino scene in the second Pet Detective movie.
Oh, I can believe that. My cousin he did that in the theater. He couldn't fucking believe how funny that shit was.
I couldn't
like
believe,
the second one, but yeah, I know. That is one of the funniest scenes in fucking movie history. Yeah.
And the second one is a movie I still like to watch every once in a while. And it's the movie that got me through my daughter's kidnapping, because I was so depressed and down. I watched 2 movies, Family Man with Nick Cage. And I would every day I would watch those 2 movies, and Me, Myself, and Irene, the piss scene. Because
I haven't seen
nobody had ever made that joke before. When he pees and it starts just shooting everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Because any guy who's ever had sex, ever had the woman's liquid gel, solidify on the end of your dick.
Well, not just that, or I thought it was just because he was still hard or whatever. But yeah, you have both problems then usually.
It's
we have a hard time aiming as it is.
And it just shoots everywhere. And I've had it happen to me. I almost lost consciousness, but I did lose my vision. I blacked out again. Both times to Jim Carrey. And I don't like Jim Carrey. But the hardest I've ever laughed in a movie was Jim Carrey. because that guy can make me fucking laugh.
Liar Liar has some really great belly laughs in it too. Like, I'm kicking my ass. Do you mind?
Do you mind?
Is that true? Well, it has
when she yells, when the little lady playing the prosecutor says to him in one of the outtakes, overactor.
Yeah, that's great.
They're on to me.
It got him off
Jennifer
guard.
Tilly and or not Jennifer Tilly, the other lady. Yeah, the other
Susie Kurtz.
Well, Jennifer
Susie,
Tilly's
yes,
in it too.
she is. But it was Susie Kurtz who said that to him.
Susie Kurtz. Yep. She's a funny little actress, man. And whenever I see what's her name, Strangers with Candy, she reminds me of Swoozie.
Oh,
she was in The Mandalorian as the lady that ran the docking bay.
Amy Sedaris.
Yeah. What's her name?
Amy Sedaris.
Sedaris. Her brother's not funny. She's funny, but she always reminds me of Swoozie. I don't know why. But she does.
I hated her in Star
We've reached the end of it. We've actually gone over by about 10 minutes. Fun show, guys. Tim always asks, are you guys going to go over 2 hours? We try to keep all shows at 2 hours because I got to be honest, man. There's other stuff we need to do.
And I got to pee.
I got to pee.
Take it back to first.
And I've got artwork to do. That's why I've got this thing is great, man. The nerve damage in my hand.
Oh, I got some work I got coming your way, man.
Oh, really?
I got some ideas.
Oh, okay. We launched this week on Tuesday at 7:00 in the morning, your time.
And you got your things coming up here too, yeah.
And I'm still nervous, man, because I keep going in and editing the page. I'm like, am I saying too much? Am I saying enough? No.
Yeah, you're
gonna panic over shit like that.
Man.
I'm always good at second guessing what I'm doing, but gonna be doing that this week. I'm gonna be on Nick's show this coming Friday. Your show. What day are we doing your show?
I think Wednesday? What day are you launching it? I was gonna say I think Wednesday is what we said, but yeah.
Tuesday, so Wednesday would probably be the day. Yeah.
Yeah, Wednesday or Friday is what we figured, but Wednesday, yeah.
Wednesday, and then Friday I'm going to be doing Nick's show, Nick Weiser, and then Steven, I'm doing your show on Monday, right?
Yeah, very early Monday morning, 12:05 a.m. Yeah, 11:05 Central.
Yeah, so I need to drink caffeine before I join you. All right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The answer is catheter. You damn Skippy. I've joked about that many a time. And
us pros got a pee bucket.
The show, guys. Yep. And we are out of here. You want to go ahead and end it, Martin?
Okay.
Yeah, do that for me real quick. All right, bud. Anyway, thanks again, Tom. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.